And you just, at some point you realize there's got to be a line somewhere.
Right, I guess so, yeah. That's true.
All right. Hey, Rick.
Hey, hi, Mark.
Hi, Rick.
Hi, all.
Bob,
Mark,
are you
going to give the report on permanent building?
Yes. Bob, are you going to talk a little bit about your note to the community and just how to...
I have a couple of things to say about COVID under the COVID section after Rick, and Greg may also.
Okay, so Rick, we'll start with you on that piece. I will mention it very casually in the slide about resources and ask people to hang on and listen, but your note to the community really has the best and latest information.
Yeah, it was good for about 5 minutes till Senator Lewis called me and made a suggestion.
But you incorporated it, right?
I did.
Yeah. So. Give Karen one more minute and we'll start. I just texted her. Hello, Ann.
Hi, Mark. How are you? How is everyone?
Yeah.
All good. How about you?
Good. Doing pretty well. Thanks.
All right, I think why don't we start? Karen said town email difficulties. Okay. When we get going, RCTV, I'll give you a countdown. So 3, 2, 1. Good evening, folks. I'd like to call the select board meeting for February 2nd, 2021 to order. This evening, oops, sorry. I'll click here. So just in terms of logistics for this evening, we're being broadcast on RCTV Live, Verizon Channel 33, Xfinity Channel 22. Also available on Facebook Live, the link from RCTV, as well as YouTube. This evening for public participation, we'll be allocating 15 minutes for public comment, probably a little bit after 7:15 is my guess. And you know the rules. Tonight, I believe we have 2 people, Caitlin, that have indicated an interest in speaking. And board members, if you're okay, we may allocate a little bit extra time to them. They have a couple of topics that they want to bring up to us. So it may be worth allowing a little bit more in that point. I want to just kind of reemphasize resources available. The best resource is the town website, readingma.gov. It contains lots of information about kind of the latest on vaccinations, the phases, all the other activities. Bob will be providing an update as part of the COVID-19 update, but really that's the central location for information that's going out. If you do have specific questions, particularly in human and elder services, there is an email that you can use, covid-19help@ci.reading.ma.us. And for general questions on COVID-19, covid-19 at ci.reading.ma.us. You can reach out to Town Hall with inquiries, 781-942-6680. We have been trying to emphasize the resources that the coalition has made available to the town. Specifically, We have 24/7 psychiatric services available through Elliott Emergency Services. Again, 24/7 is an 800 number, 800-988-1111. I believe this information is available on a banner on ICTV and also on the town website. We have other resources that are also available, and very specifically, the coalition, you can reach out directly to Sammy Salkin, who is our outreach coordinator. Her email is ssalkin@ci.reading.ma.us, or her phone number, 781-942-6756. And again, if ever there's an emergency, you should be dialing 911 directly. Okay, for tonight's agenda, so we'll start out with a little bit on COVID response. Dr. Richard Lopez is going to speak from the Board of Health. I think Greg Burns, Fire Chief, is going to speak. Bob will speak as well. We'll go to liaison reports. We'll take public comment. I don't believe we have any outdoor dining applications, Bob, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, so we don't have any there. In the packet is a more description on the park idea, and we'll discuss that and take a vote on that. Then we'll get some updates. First, the Birch Meadow master plan, then the open space plan, and then the Maylet land. Then we're scheduled to talk about, have a discussion about a draft DPW conservation protocol related to tree safety within conservation areas. Bob's going to give us a little bit of an update on goals outside of COVID, if any. We'll move to meeting minutes and then talk about future agenda topics and schedule. So without further ado, let me hand it off to Dr. Lopez with the Board of Health update.
Sure. So I'll be relatively brief. There's three things I just want to mention. One is in terms of case counts, I connected with our public health nurse, and they continue to clean up the database. And what she reported to me today was we have currently about 145 active cases. So it's clearly going down. I think we're in the post-surge period, like the rest of the state and the country. And hopefully it'll continue in that direction. Secondly, in terms of vaccinations, I wish I had more to say. You know, we did get a flurry of calls last week regarding residents who were interested, who were over 75, who were interested in phase 2. We took names, but as Bob's memo to the community stated, the state is really limiting us in terms of the numbers of doses that we're getting, at least initially. And so I think we have a vaccination clinic scheduled for this Thursday or Friday at the high school to vaccinate some remaining phase 1 individuals, and also to test out sort of mass vaccination if we get to that point, and hopefully we will at some point down the line, to test out the workflow and how things would be set up and how that would work. And perhaps Bob or Greg can talk more about that. You know, I listened to a DPH information call today, and it doesn't seem like it's likely that the state is going to move beyond the 75-year-old plus into other 65-year-olders and so forth down that list of phase 2, probably until at least 2 weeks and maybe even 3 or 4 weeks. So it's going to be a while. You know, the state is clearly prioritizing providing vaccine to the mass vaccination sites, which they plan to set up more, to pharmacies to get broader geographical distribution, and I think to some of the hospital systems that are large enough. But local boards of health and, you know, private physician offices are, you know, getting only a trickle at this point. So I think we have the capability, capacity, and we've done the planning to be able to deliver on the vaccine. We just need to get the vaccine. And then lastly, I'll just point out, which you may have already heard, is that the school system is moving towards doing pool testing probably in the next 2 weeks as part of a statewide effort to do that. And there are detailed plans out there to start that and see how that goes. So that's really all I have. I don't know, Bob, if you want to chime in or.
Sure. Thanks, Rick. If you didn't see the latest that just came out from the town, veterans age 60 and older who are enrolled in the VA healthcare system are now available to contact the VA. The Bedford VA hospital is giving out inoculations and making appointments. Consistently over the last few weeks, I've heard the VA is doing a really nice job. So it's nice to see one success story anyways. We have 3 small clinics scheduled to finish our work, as Greg mentioned. I'm sorry, as Richard mentioned, under phase 1 vaccinations. We're hopeful that in the next couple of weeks, we might be able to move to phase 2 if we get vaccine. I think we're expecting to, but until it comes in the door, we want to be a little bit cautious. It appears for the foreseeable future, the most we'll be able to do is schedule small-sized clinics, probably at the Pleasant Street Center by appointment only. Our planning for large-scale mass sort of vaccinations is there, but that would require upwards of 500 plus doses, and it just does not seem like that's going to be practical. Whatever becomes available under phase 2, we'll certainly make good notification of the community. And as Rick also mentioned, we have taken down about 300 names of 75 plus who are interested in being updated as soon as they can. So that's all I have. Greg, is there anything you want to correct or add?
You're
Muted.
Yeah, thank you. No, I think both you and Rick summed it up well. We are ready to give vaccine as soon as we receive it. We've done 3 vaccines already. We've done first doses for all our first responders. On Friday, we're going to do a clinic to test the plans for a large scale vaccination. And so we're bringing in administrative help to help us with that, because we're going to be using the prep mod system. And that's what everybody needs to log on to in order to get a vaccination in the state. So we're going to be using that system, and that'll really let us know what we need to tweak for a larger system, larger vaccination. So so we've done 3 already, and then the week of Tuesday, the February 9th and February 16th, we'll be doing second doses for our first responders. Friday's vaccination is going to be additional people that are in the phase 1 group. This has been changing. This changes continually for us, and we need to adapt continuously. And a lot of positions within the school department were moved to the phase 1. So we're going to be giving them their first dose on Friday. And one of the things I just wanted to emphasize is that we've built a structure to deal with this that makes up members of all town departments and elected and appointed boards responding to what Mark is a regular participant of our meetings. And so on the vaccination on Friday, like the other vaccinations, we have school nurses that are assisting us. We have the public health nurse that's assisting us. We have the elder human services nurse vaccinating. And we also have firefighter paramedics vaccinating. So we have a real team effort, and we have a real large pool of trained people that we can draw on. So we have a lot of strengths here. And what we're missing is access to a large supply of vaccine on a regular basis. If that ever comes, then we can do larger vaccinations, but we'll still need these larger state venues, the hospitals and the doctor's offices, just because of the sheer population numbers to do. But I think we can make a significant difference if we can get the supply. Thank you.
Thanks, Greg. Kevin Bowmiller's on the call. Kevin, is there anything that you wanted to add, especially in terms of the veterans, the VA Bedford?
Just at the VA Bedford, they have plenty of vaccine, so give them a call. They're actually doing a clinic at a community-based outpatient clinic in Gloucester this weekend. And it's the same number, the 781-687-4000, and people can make an appointment in Gloucester as well as Bedford. So again, it's for people that are already enrolled in the VA healthcare system. If they're not enrolled in the VA healthcare system, there's a link on the website on how to go about that. So the shots are there. If you're enrolled, go get it. I know we've had a lot of people from town who have gone over to Bedford and gotten them already. So that's encouraging.
Thanks, Kevin. Ann?
For the 300 residents ages 75 plus who've reached out and have been put on a list, were they also directed to, to monitor the state website and or, reach out to their own physicians, given that we don't know if and when we're getting a real supply that would allow us to vaccinate, a good chunk of our population here in Reading?
Yeah, and I made it a real point of saying, just because you're on a list, don't expect that to mean anything.
Yes.
Here's all the other tools you need to use, and
Great.
we'll get back to you when we can.
Great. To the extent we have vaccine that we'll be able to start administering to people in phase 2, given that the supply at this point seems pretty limited, is there how are we prioritizing who will get the vaccine? Is it a first come, first serve type of situation? Or if you're 75 plus and you have a comorbidity, how is that how are those decisions being made?
And as soon as we think there might be vaccine in the pipeline, we haven't even had those discussions yet, honestly. That's how far away it is.
Okay.
But what I would say is that the state, if you go to the state website /COVID vaccine and you click on phase 2, it lists in very specific order, who is eligible in phase 2. It's not like all of these people. It goes 75 plus and then 65 with 2 more comorbidities, and it goes down in a list, so that I think, the expectation is we would be following that prioritization.
Right. I'm thinking more of like if we have 100 vaccines that were allocated that week and we're in, the beginning of phase 2 and it's 75
Right.
plus and we've, already administered to everyone in phase 1, how do we decide
Good point.
which members of our community in the 75 plus will get that? Is it first come, first serve, or are we going to delineate in any other fashion?
I would, we haven't had that discussion, as Bob said. It does seem like, to me, I would just say that given that we don't know the medical history of these 75-year-old plus people, it's hard. We would have no ways of knowing who is more ill or frail than others. And so it probably would be first come, first serve, is my guess.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, we've encouraged people to become familiar with the online tools, even if they don't try to make an appointment at Fenway Park, because when the word comes out, it'll be a race.
Yeah, I was just going to add, I want to first of all compliment the command team for being very thorough about this, thinking it through, making sure we understand how to approach it. The team's been fantastic, to the point where when I believe when we knew exactly how many we were getting on a weekly basis, there's an expectation that a few people might not be able to make it. And so there is an ability to add a few people to the list. So if there are 50 available, perhaps 55 are set up on the list so that nothing is being wasted. I don't think we've ever had a situation of extra, have we? No, it doesn't seem. Just on an anecdotal basis for a second, also, the people that I know in town and out of town that have been successful have in getting an appointment have done it, I'll call it by brute force. And what I mean by that is they take every avenue that's available. They talk to their doctor's office. They look at their healthcare system. They go to the state website. They register on PrepMod. They do all of those things kind of continually. And the people that have done that I know have been successful. It's taken a lot of work, but they've been successful in getting appointments.
And I would say, you know, the local Board of Health we're not alone in sort of waiting for vaccine. I have contacts with BI Deaconess Leahy system and the Atris Health system, and they're sort of in the same position where they have the infrastructure to be able to do mass vaccinations, but haven't been able to get enough vaccine for even their patients.
And I saw you had another comment.
I do. Our public health nurses and school nurses now all vaccinated?
Yes.
Okay. And given that you said that it doesn't seem clear whether sort of the second step of phase 2 will be available for 3 weeks or so, I take it we don't know when our teachers will be able to be vaccinated?
We don't have a definite date, and I think teachers are in the, if I recall on that list, they're about 3rd or 4th down from the top.
They're at 75 plus 65 plus one or more comorbidities, and then teachers and other public facing employees are the next level, I think.
Yeah. So we have no idea.
Karen.
Quick question for the doctor. So it might appear as though some of our neighboring communities might have more vaccinations because they're banding together and publicizing their vaccination clinics. How are communities getting vaccinations? Do we pretty much have the same as Wakefield and those other towns that kind of group together? I guess I think people are raising the concern that, you know, why are they able to do more mass vaccinations and we aren't?
I can answer that because I covered that in my memo to the community last week. There are state-defined health regions. We're in one with communities to our north and our west. Wakefield is probably our sister community in many ways, but in this sense, they're completely unrelated to Reading. So Melrose, Wakefield, Stoneham, and places in that direction are just under a whole different set of vaccine availability and rollout. One of our state elected officials has been trying to get Reading residents at least eligible to come to the CVS in Wakefield because, quote unquote, Reading residents live closer to that than Wakefield residents do. So there's a lot of artificial barriers. And then, not to cast too many aspersions, but some communities without the vaccine have advertised large-scale clinics and then had to either apologize or make an excuse why they can't do it. And we've chosen not to publicize things until we know we have supply.
Bob, I mean, my assumption is that this rationing to communities of the vaccine is pretty equally distributed. So if there are 6 communities that are banded together in that kind of collaboration, you know, they get 600. If there is, you know, it's not like they're getting any more. Is that right?
Well, the numbers I saw, I forget the region. It's the one that Wakefield and others are in.
Yeah.
The population is like 210,000, and they had less than 1,000 allocated to them over a period of time. Where we are, our population was smaller and we had a smaller allocation, but it generally would work out as you'd think to be quote unquote fair.
Thank you. That was the question I was asking. Appreciate that.
Other questions from the board? All good. Thank you very much, folks. Much appreciated. Thanks for joining us this evening as well.
Thank you.
Let's move to liaison reports. As I'm seeing you on the screen, Vanessa, you want to go first?
Sure. So I have 2. The schools have selected the finalists for the superintendent search, and they will be doing interviews this Thursday, I think Monday and Tuesday. I'm seeking clarification on where residents can watch those interviews. But that's, so the final superintendent should be picked soon. And also an exciting development from RMLD. So RMLD reached out to Karen and myself. They brought to our attention a really phenomenal state grant that's available right now. It's Mass EVIP Direct Current Program. And it's a competitive grant that can provide up to $50,000 to install electric vehicle charging stations. So really great opportunity for us. RMLD can take the lead, but they need guidance on putting forward potential locations. They do need this guidance by mid-February. The applications are due in early March. So Bob, I'm happy to send you the link and have you and the staff coordinate directly with them, but it would be a shame to pass up this opportunity when we have so many opportunities around town that we've been talking about to put in charging stations. So let's see if we can get some of that state grant money.
Vanessa, do you know if that was available for, so-called private locations, some of the new buildings?
It has. I'd have to check the website. Like I said, I'm happy to send it to you, and okay. The staff take a look. But
okay.
I think it's both. There's more funding available if it's on town land.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Mark.
Yeah.
Oh, just wanted to follow up on Bob. Bob, have you had any private property owners offering to host a public charging station? Is that what you asked?
Not a public charging station, but one for their own residents.
Okay, thanks.
All right, Carlo.
Hello, thanks. All right, I got a few. Tonight, I'll mention it anyway, but tonight you're going to get a preview. The rec committee approved moving forward with a plan to have a walkway go down the main spine of Birch Meadow that will be lit. And another exciting project, and this all can be funded for approximately about $1 million. You'll get a preview later tonight. Also a storage and restroom pavilion is part of this project. And there's talk of solar and what kind of roofing that is eco-friendly and all that stuff. So we'll get that presentation tonight. But I was at that meeting and got a nice preview, very exciting that we can move forward, hopefully with this phase of the Birch Meadow Master Plan. And that was that. And then on CPDC, they got some edits from town council on the outdoor dining, nothing major. And they started to discuss potential zoning bylaw amendments to the downtown smart growth district. And so they started to talk about that out loud and what that will look like to present to November town meeting 2021 to actually make some amendments because everything will be up above ground and that accordingly. And as an official non-liaison assignment, I did speak with Anne and Louise from the compost team of the Green Sanctuary Committee. It's a mouthful. From the Universalist Unitarian Church, and I know we got an email from them several weeks ago, and they want to learn more about it, and they would like to present to the board in March. So to talk about Black Earth for private residents and as a municipality, because they have that program as well. And that's it.
Thanks, Carlo. Anne?
I don't have any liaison reports. I noticed in our email, our collective select board email, there was an email from a group of parents inviting us to a meeting tomorrow night. I have not responded, but I just wanted to see if other folks were attending as I'm determining my own availability for tomorrow night to make sure we wouldn't have a quorum.
Yeah, that's a wise question. Are there folks that would want to plan to go that or who already were?
I'm sorry, I missed the beginning part. Which meeting is it?
I received an email from a group of Reading, I think it was Reading Memorial High School parents, or perhaps it was broader Reading Public Schools parents, asking for an audience of select board members and school committee members to listen to their concerns tomorrow night. I think it
Okay,
was tomorrow.
I didn't get to read all of that letter. Okay, well, if we need another person to attend, let me know.
Yeah, I'm.
No, I think it's not so much a question of needing people to attend, but making sure that we don't have 3 or more of us in attendance. I'm not hearing that everyone's planning to attend.
I was planning to go.
Okay.
You're planning to go. Okay. Anyone else? If I can, I will, unless someone else is interested.
I'll attend.
Okay, then I will not.
I want to leave it at Vanessa and I will attend. I think that's
Okay.
a good call. Is that
All right, very good. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen.
Okay, first up, so we have a VASC meeting that we are trying to schedule. I think we might have 4 or 5 candidates. It won't be a long one. One of the people that have submitted an application is my daughter, so I need your help with this. I need to either recuse myself for just that one section, or for the entire VASC meeting, and it'll be a short one, so I'm certainly open if somebody else would like to join in. I believe Caitlin was trying to schedule us for this coming Monday at 6 p.m., but that could be flexible as well.
Really be any time next week.
Thanks.
I haven't reached out to applicants yet.
I can jump in if it's just the one,
And
unless someone else is dying to do it.
I have to say, I am traveling on Monday too, so weird things could happen when you travel, but yeah, so if you wanted to stick around for another 40-50 minutes, that'd be awesome too.
Sure, I'm happy to cover. It's fine. It's an hour.
Thank you. Okay, all right. RMLD, yeah, thank you. Vanessa brought that up. It's a great program with a rapidly approaching deadline. Climate Advisory Committee was very busy this week. Oh my goodness, they're going to be sponsoring a clean energy related conference, and shame on me, I didn't write down the name of it. And so I will have to bring that up at our next meeting. I'm very excited that they're going to do that. And they have also been working hard, and at a request from RMLD that would be helpful to hear from Reading what kinds of power they should be investing in, what kind of power purchases we would like to see. So they have been working on that, and they have put together recommendations and a 5 or 6 slide presentation, and I think they would like us to take a look at it. It does refer to biomass, so given that that is an active topic up at the State House, I might recommend that we try to get that on an agenda as soon as possible if you all are willing.
Karen, are you thinking this is the phantom joint meeting between the 2 boards, or is this more just a presentation, or what are you thinking?
So, and you know what? So what they're asking is that we need to give guidance to RMLD through our CAB is officially how it works. So they've said, we're the Climate Advisory Committee. We have an opinion. We've done some research, and we'd like to give the select board some feedback for RMLD. So I would not call this a joint meeting with RMLD, but they have done the legwork for us. They would love us to take a look at it. And if we're okay with the work they've done, to submit it directly to RMLD so they know what kind of power we're interested in, not interested in as a community.
Great. So if we put it on kind of a near-term agenda, then they would propose sending that information to us. We can think about it, talk about it, see if there are any changes, zip it off to CAB.
Yeah, so we haven't done that before since I've been on the board, so I'm not sure what the mechanism is, whether we vote or just discuss it and say, yes, send it along.
Cool.
Yep.
Maybe we can invite Vivek maybe to join us too.
Okay, let's see. All right. I attended the Open Space Planning Forum last night. We had a good 30 plus participants, and then we broke it out into small moderated brainstorming groups, and the categories were, what is Reading doing well? What could we do better? And what would we like to see in the future? And sort of some And they're collecting this data and they'll provide much more detail, but just to share with you a few of the highlights, we spent a lot of time talking about Matera Cabin. This has been a great resource for the town, and it does essentially pay for itself through the nominal rental charges we use. But it is currently in need of maintenance and could be better utilized by a larger group of residents. Some of the suggestions related to, with COVID in mind, to exterior use of the property, offering picnic tables, places for seating, garden areas, potential for a community garden effort. With better seating, it could potentially be used for concerts, as we get further along. It is a lot of upland land. Potentially the trails could be built out a little bit. There is a brand new handicap bathroom up there. If we're going to maybe make it more accessible outside, could we make that bathroom accessible as well? And these are the same kind of issues that have come up in the Birch Meadow master planning. Suggestion to potentially add a deck. And also, this was an issue that was sort of across all of our recreation areas, like doggy bags, better trash barrel maintenance and doggy bags and having them filled. And somebody came up with a great idea of rental of snowshoes as something we could consider for Matera Cabin. So the issue there is we're in budget season, and this is a gem and it's a great resource that was donated to the community. So we need to take care of it. So I might ask Bob whether it'd be possible to look into increasing maintenance, whether it's somebody suggested additional seasonal workers next summer to take care of some things over there. Trail maintenance was another area that we could do better. The trail maintenance is highly executed by the Trails Committee, and these folks are delivering a high value service that we would normally pay for, and they're not really up to the trail. So the great news is we'll be getting these additional trails created and more trailheads and more donations of property, but we're perhaps outstripping what the Trail Committee could handle. So suggestions were expanding the committee size, and again, looking at their funding. I think they have a budget of $1,500, and so they're always scrambling for materials and other people. And somebody commented that they're not getting any younger, but I didn't say that. And then let's see, town forest. On the topic of town forest, it was discussed that there are some parking concerns, and there is another entrance up at Wood End. So potentially we could publicize that it's available. It's deserted on the weekends, especially now. Bike trails, or potential biking committee. In the parks, a need for shade devices, better trash receptacles, the doggy bag stations that are filled. Requests for more green space downtown and pocket parks in neighborhoods. And then driving all that, is there's going to be some additional funding needed. So we talked about, the potential other towns have created active legacy programs. There were several groups that came back and said, we need to look into the CPA grant program again. And so that's a summary, and this group will be coming back with full details, all sort of collected and organized. And it was a great meeting last night. So that's it. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Karen. So we're to me. Couple of updates. One, I want to talk about the meeting with the coalition. I'm actually going to share a slide. Two kind of big things going on. Number one, the medication Dropbox in the lobby of the Reading Police Department had been closed during COVID. It is now open again. So if you have medications that you need to dispose of, you're able to bring them there now. So that's first of all, that's great news. Second is that the coalition is now partnered with a group called Doc Wayne. And this is a child mental health program that allows for both individual and group therapy sessions. I believe it kind of uses a sports theming structure. It's a nonprofit in Boston. We have access to it. There are 2 information sessions. One just ended, unfortunately, but the second one, I think, is on Thursday from 12 to 12:30. If you go to the coalition website, either through the town website or the school website to learn about the coalition, you can learn more about this program. It's available both, I think, by referrals, but also if people have interests just in learning more about it, there's a way to kind of get engaged with it. There's a lot of great discussion about it, and it's another great opportunity brought through by the coalition. Second is, come back to here. Last night, the Permanent Building Committee had a meeting that I attended, Vanessa attended as well, and brought up the topic of the construction of the water tank. And the meeting was great. It was kind of a screening meeting to see what our interest was with the select board, to understand more about the project, and for them to kind of think a little bit more about how it might fit within their charter. They brought up, so it was a 15 to 20 minute slot that I had. I think at about 55 minutes we stopped. There were just lots and lots of great questions and comments that came through. Ryan, first of all, was there, the town engineer, and he had a lot of good information that was very helpful. It answered many of the questions that were going on. There also were probably a half dozen residents that also listened in to the meeting last night to kind of hear what was happening. Bottom line, I think, is that there are some areas, in my opinion, where the Permanent Building Committee could really add some value. One thing in particular that stuck out to me is thinking about logistical issues in a tight space, which we certainly will have at Auburn Street. And a number of the members talked about their experience working in tight spaces in the city of Boston, with cranes fitting into very narrow spaces and figuring out how to move things. It was a good discussion. Where it was left is that they would like an application to be filled out kind of with more detail of the project. This project is a little bit further along than one that would typically come before them. I think it's, many things are already specified. That said, I think there are some things that they have a lot of comments and helpful advice on that would work. So the next step would be to fill out their application form. What I suggest here, Bob, is I kind of took my stab at it already with what I can put into it. Probably I would ask Ryan to complete it from that point and zip it over to them. And they have committed to putting it on their agenda for their next meeting as kind of a follow-up to it. So I thought one of the questions they brought up was pretty funny. They said, why does the select board want the PBC to get engaged with us? And this was probably after 40 minutes of discussion. And they basically said, because of the last 40 minutes of questions that you guys asked, is exactly why. So I thought the meeting went well, and I think we had talked about approaching it this way. I think we should continue with it, if that's okay with other board members.
Yep, nice report.
Cool, thanks. So that's it from my side. Bob, can I turn it to you?
Yeah, thanks, Mark. To follow up on something Vanessa mentioned, I don't have full information, but on Thursday the 4th, Monday the 8th, and Tuesday the 9th, there is a 4:30 to 5:30 community agenda item for each of the final 3 candidates for superintendent of schools. So I'll find out more information about how the community can interact, and I will send that to the full board. I'd like to thank the school committee for inviting me in the process. It's been a lot of hours. I'll be meeting each candidate during these 3 days myself, but it's really been very helpful, a very good process. Again, just thanks to the school committee for asking me to participate. At the end of this month, the finance committee starts its budget deliberations. February 24th, they meet Wednesdays. February 24th, they'll start with the school budget. The next 2 Wednesdays, if any board members have interest, March 3rd and March 10th is when they'll be reviewing town budgets. Normally they take 2 nights. The last couple of years when they've been attending the select board meetings in December, it's gone quicker. So it's conceivable they might be done in 1 night, but we scheduled 2. Thanks to DPW, you'll see some staff later. A number of employees, almost all of them worked for 30 hours consecutively in the snowstorm. It was only a foot of snow, not a huge deal, but it's the duration of a storm that really stretches out the resources. For those that are concerned, The work is not done. After 30 hours, they're really not supposed to work anymore, maybe 31. They were sent home at 2 o'clock to rest. But a good number of them will be out tonight shortly and start working on sidewalks and the typical sort of night 2 cleanup, if you will. And just to remind everyone, there's not a separate staff for this. This is the water, the sewer, the parks, the highway department, cemetery department employees, all just plowing snow. And, you know, plus contractors, one of them that's large and extremely helpful. So thanks to everyone. I think they did a pretty good job. Thankfully, it didn't freeze right away. That's when you get trouble. And I'll cover some other items during my goal update that I might otherwise cover here, but that's all I have, Mark.
Bob, is Camp Curtis one of the items you'll cover
Yes.
later?
Yep.
Okay. Okay. I told you I'd remind you.
Thank you.
Board members, any questions on those reports and what we discussed so far? Ann?
I did actually, as a parent, receive some information about Superintendent of Schools community forums coming up as early as this week, Thursday, the first Thursday, February 4th at 4:30 p.m., then Monday, February 8th at 4:30 p.m., and Tuesday, February 9th at 4:30 p.m. Looks like it's the schedule was made available to parents with Zoom links. And it says it's an opportunity to ask questions and provide feedback to the school committee and to meet the 3 finalists for the superintendent of schools position.
Great. And do we know, is that posted? I'm sure that must be on the school's website, the school committee website.
I will check. I think usually the emails that come out are also on the school's website.
Great. Thanks, Ann. Any other questions, comments? Okay, let's move to public comment. And I believe we have 2 people. Do we have Will in the waiting room?
Yep.
Great. Please let him in.
I believe it's him. I have Will. Just says Will.
Any other questions, comments? There you go. Well, can we ask you to turn down your computer, please? I'm hearing myself again still.
Yeah, I just turned it off.
Thank you. Some people do that sooner. I'm just kidding. Sorry. So, Will, you've got the floor. We're all set for you.
Yeah, I'm
Whoop, we've lost you.
commenting on the tree safety.
Please. I think you're bouncing in and out.
Item later on. I just want to make the right items. Pardon?
You were kind of fading in.
You're
and
not
out.
hearing
We
me?
weren't hearing you. Try again. I think we're
Oh,
hearing you now.
sorry. I'm on a phone that should work, but so the it's not really clear in part 8 of the tree safety issues, number 8. It states that if a tree is not accessible by DPW or the Forestry Commission, that the Trails Committee is responsible or needs to spend their funds to remove the tree. And this is in the town forest specifically. Now the town forest committee has about the same budget as the Trails Committee every year. And it's a little puzzling why it should be on the back of the Trails Committee to deal with these issues. And then the second point is, if it's not accessible by DPW, how is it going to be accessible by Trails Committee to do this work? Normally, we have volunteers that cut trees that are an issue. We got a lot of people out there that are doing this work. But it's, we don't have the funds to bring in another crew, a professional crew to do this kind of thing. So when this happens in the past, if a big tree falls down, the trail, gets rerouted around the fall until we can rectify the situation. But just that part of the policy, the proposed policy, is puzzling and doesn't seem workable for a number of reasons. I mean, it does clearly say that the Trails Committee may remove the trees or may work on the project, but so it's not forcing us to do it, but it's still it doesn't solve the problem of the funding issue.
Bob, I see you had your hand up. Did you want to respond?
I think Will just clarified it. I just wanted to make sure everyone understood it was not a responsibility of the Trails Committee. It was just an option or a tool that they might be able to use. And I'm sure this will be discussed later tonight in more detail.
Yeah. So tonight is just a discussion. It's kind of the first reading, if you will. And so this input is very helpful to that. And obviously we've got, I see Chuck is on, he'll be on for the discussion later. And so this will not be, there's no vote on this evening.
All right, yeah, good. And I realize that, the text is subject to interpretation. So I just wanted to put in my 2 cents right now to express our interest and concerns.
Great.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Will. Thanks for joining. And we have one other person who wants to speak, Caitlin? Yep. Well, can we ask you to swap off this and then back to your, thanks.
It's Kathy Kelly.
Hey, Kathy, welcome. I love your backdrop.
Oh, thanks so much, Bob. Am I up?
Yes, you're up, please.
Okay. Well, thank you, Mr. Chair, for allowing me to provide public input to this meeting. I understand you've talked a little bit about it, but am I to address where I live? Is that correct?
Please, yeah, name and address.
Okay, my name is Kathy Kelly. I live at 36 Grove Street, and I'm the current chair of the Reading Trails Committee. We recently learned from the packet that you put out on page 84, number 8, that the Trails Committee may have to pay for tree removal in the town forest in order to keep a trail open and safe to use. And I have I have 3 comments I'd like to make about that. First, the Trails Committee had no input into this new policy and hasn't had a chance to discuss it at a meeting. And second, the Trails Committee does not have a budget to pay for removing trees. And third, and lastly, the Trails Committee doesn't want to be in the middle of a forestry and conservation in determining jurisdiction. So we do have some concerns.
Sorry, I'm just writing feverishly.
Okay, thanks. And we've had an unprecedented amount of trees down, especially last year. And I'm certain there's a ton more in there after last night. And we are, we watch the whole town for trees that have fallen and try to get in there as soon as we can. So any help we can get is really helpful.
Great, thanks. So tonight we're only having this is the first discussion about it. There's not a vote that's being taken tonight. So
good.
Appreciate very much your input on that. It's very helpful to us.
Great, thanks. We just want to have, have an opportunity to have a say in it if possible.
Karen?
Kathy, is your next meeting tomorrow night? Did you?
No, I sent you an email. We postponed it to next Wednesday, the 10th. At 7 p.m.
And Mark, how does that line up with our next meetings?
We're the 16th.
Okay, good. So, yeah, good. All right, thank you.
All right, thanks so much.
Thanks, Kathy. Thank you for joining.
Okay.
Okay, so let's move. Next on our agenda was going to be the outdoor dining placeholder. So actually, it's worth talking through this a little bit. So there have been, as of this point, no applications. Is that correct for public space?
Correct.
Okay. So, all right, we're hoping there would be, but there have not been so far. I think, you know, one of the issues in my mind is that the state hasn't made clear the liquor opportunities for outdoors yet for this year.
That's right.
And that may be holding some discussion up, you know, or not. I see. I don't know if, you know, Bob, Julie, if you have any comments further to that.
I would say that is definitely holding up at least one applicant.
Yeah. Okay, so hopefully we can keep the pressure on. Hopefully the state will do something soon, given that this is February. Next is the park. Julie, hand it to, oh, I'm sorry, Carla.
Thanks. Sorry, Julie. Thanks, Mark. I just want to, I know we're not, there was a placeholder and we just, you just spoke about it, but I want to take this opportunity to, from last week's meeting, a few of you said that Erin was talking about hypotheticals with a license, with a specialty license. And to me, it wasn't hypothetical. She said she had 2 businesses wanting to come to town. And business moves a lot faster than government. So I really want to put forward that we try to acquire another license like this. And it's in our jurisdiction to issue it or not. If we wait for an applicant to say, this is what I want to do, and it's right after town meeting, A, do they not have to wait till November? But it's, you know, we need more tools in the toolbox. So I get it when a few of you said it's a hypothetical, but to me, it wasn't a hypothetical. She had 2 viable businesses. I'm very familiar with the concept, a restaurant and an adjacent market. There's one in Beverly, if some of you have been to it. I'm not saying that's the person that's coming, I'm saying the concept. And I've been to others in different states. So if we want businesses like that to come to town, we have to be proactive. So I really want to move this forward, and with Bob's help or whoever's help, to get this in front of town meeting if we have to, and acquire or get a license approved. Because if we don't, then it's going to be hanging out there in the wind when someone wants to come and we're starting from ground zero. So I just want to take this line item as an effort to kind of convince those who thought it was a hypothetical that if we don't have it, we can't issue it. Thanks.
Thanks, Carla.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Some staff met with town council early this week. I think it's Tuesday, so it must have been yesterday. And there are 2 definitive businesses. There are two definitive locations. One's probably on a little faster track than the other. But where we left it with Erin was to please let me know by Thursday and encourage both to come forward to the board and see you next week, or next meeting, sorry. So your packet goes out next Tuesday for the next meeting. Ideally, both of them will come see you. I can't say whether they will or they won't, but I said, you know, if you really want to push this license issue, come see the board and show them what you're interested in. And through town council, you know, we do understand the path forward, and time does grow short, certainly. And I'll just kind of summarize that the path forward that each probably would take would not require a vote by the voters for a special act, so that it is possible still to do work this spring. It would require town meeting action, and it would require a vote of the legislature through a home rule petition, but it would not require a vote of the voters. That would be the biggest hurdle for this spring. So I'll keep you informed. Hopefully one or both comes forward.
Awesome. And I think, you know, thinking about April town meeting is great if they're able to come and speak with us soon. If not, the hurdle of having a special town meeting, if we need one, is not that high, especially when they're virtual meetings. So I think we can actually respond very quickly to things. And if it doesn't, if a vote of us and of town meeting is sufficient, we probably could respond very quickly. So I take your point, Carlo. I think it's a very important point. I love that we have some folks that are interested. Maybe we can find out exactly what they're interested in and then make sure that that's what we can provide.
Thanks. My only issue with the special town meeting is, you know, quorum. That's the only side issue that could potentially hinder us. So Whether one of these two come forward or not, I'm glad Erin's working with them. I want to move forward with this because it's just something nice to have, because this is a viable concept that's out there. Just like these lifestyle centers or the new mall. No one's building malls anymore. They're building Market Street. They're building Wayside in Burlington. So this new concept that's out there, the restaurant with the market and wanting to sell alcohol, is a new concept. So I think if we have business owners out there and, one of these two might not want to tip their hand, maybe they'll both tip their hand and great. But if they don't want to tip their hand, then I still want to move forward. That's just where I stand. That's all. Thanks.
Understood. Thanks. Any other comments? Sorry, I didn't mean to move so quickly off that item. Okay, great. Julie, can we hand it to you to talk about Park?
Hi, yeah, thank you for having me back. So since we last talked about the Parking Advisory and Recommendations Committee, I made some changes based on your feedback. The biggest changes were just increasing the committee to 9 people so that there would be 7 sort of like residents at large and stakeholders, aside from a CPDC member and a select board member. And then changing the deadline to December 31st, 2021. And specifying that the members need to be, in addition to, business owners or whatever, also need to be residents, which I believe you also received a memo from town council kind of outlining a potential conflict of interest issue in some scenarios for how to handle that going forward. And those are all the big changes.
So I guess maybe start board members. Do we want to talk a little bit about how to avoid that conflict of interest? There were 2 paths as I read it. The second one to me sounded a little bit more straightforward in terms of specifically identifying that the committee must contain a business owner, I believe that lives in the community or that owns the property, business owner in the community. That would be an acceptable way of doing it. If we don't do it that way, then the first item she outlined is that there is potential conflict of interest. It needs kind of on a case by case, I didn't understand it was meeting by meeting, but case by case basis, we have to, there has to be that filing of potential conflict of interest, and it seemed more messy. Vanessa.
Thanks, Mark. I had questions about this and actually reached out to Ivrea for a little bit more clarification. So there's a standard disclosure form indicating potential conflict of interest. Bob actually filled one out a couple years ago regarding the infamous rat infestations that we had in a couple of areas of town. So the form is pretty straightforward. It's not complex. Ivrea did advise using this disclosure form as a neater way of doing it. So it's a little bit tidier and sort of puts everyone's cards on the table. So having spoken to her, I was in line with you, Mark, but having spoken to her offline, I would go with the completing the form path as opposed to not.
Thanks, Anne.
Yeah, I think it would create a little bit more, administrative bureaucracy, but, the conflict of interest laws are also there for a reason, and it would actually allow for there to be clarity if there is a conflict of interest, in which case there may be situations where it is appropriate for someone to recuse themselves from a particular vote. So it may actually make sense to, like Vanessa said, make sure all the cards are on the table.
So just to clarify on that, so we probably would need someone from staff to guide that process. As opposed to relying on someone who's not used to some of the town government things. I'm thinking out loud here just to make sure that the point of this is to get business owners involved. And we don't want to scare them away. We want to kind of find a way that we can include them. And to your point, Anne and Vanessa, if there is a conflict, okay, you need to talk about it. I just don't want to be in a situation where people are, I'm not going to get involved, sorry. Carla, did I see your hand? Nope. Come back. Sorry, Vanessa.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty straightforward. There should be either staff or town council guidance that can be provided to, it's really only a handful of people that this would apply to. Any residents that were in the neighborhood, and presumably anyone who would want to serve on this subcommittee or ad hoc would presumably be from the neighborhood affected. So they would have to file the form. So I think adding, you know, a business owner or two, however many we designate, there is a small administrative ask, I think, but it seems pretty manageable and worthwhile.
I don't know if Ivrea mentioned this, but I'm wondering if we actually, as the select board, as their appointing authority, would then sign off on their moving forward. You know, they disclose a potential conflict, but say that they feel that they can behave ethically, even though there's an appearance, and we say, okay, thank you for disclosing this. Given what you've told us, we think you can move forward in an ethical manner. That may be, because I've certainly, you know, both in my day job and in my select board role have had to fill out and turn in conflict forms. So it's something I'm familiar with.
Thank you. Bob?
I did not speak to town council about this, but I read it the same way Ann did. I think each of these needs to be approved rather than just, you know, me walking down and giving it to the town clerk. So what I would suggest is certainly staff and town council can play a role, but the VASC would also be in a good position to have a discussion before the appointment is made. And what happens, for instance, with the, I'll just say FinCom appointment committee, usually the moderator or myself as staff will have that discussion. Is there a conflict of interest or the appearance of a conflict of interest? And that's a good forum to have that discussion instead of, you know, at the select board meeting while you're, you know, potentially being appointed. And that can be explained to applicants that have unique situations. So I think the right forum is probably the VASC meeting, but we can certainly preview it with anyone that applies so that they understand, you know, what they might be facing.
Are we viewing it? One of my questions is if it's a business owner, we're talking about potential parking that can help their business. I assume that something that simple is not a conflict of interest, because I think that's the only reason why they would participate is for that very reason, is to engage in trying to assist in parking around their business.
You know, it sounded like it had to be something more specific, a specific benefit for the business, not just for all businesses. That's the way I didn't speak to Ivrea though.
I could see, there could definitely be at least the appearance of a conflict though, if there's something that's, you know, their business is going to get some particular parking right in front or something like that. And I feel like we would want someone to disclose that actually, to know that they're thinking about that and whether they can be fair-minded in making those evaluations.
Okay, other members?
Oh, sorry.
Karen.
So I'm just trying to figure this out. If this gets done and I'm on the VASC, then are we, you know, just to fill out their application, they'll say they're from business XYZ and we'll ask them to talk about the parking in front of their business and that'll be recorded. Is that enough of a disclosure?
No.
No.
Formal form.
Yeah, we'll have a written process for
Okay.
everyone.
I would
through town
appreciate that.
council.
Vanessa?
The disclosure form includes those exact details, Karen, so that it is part of the official record of their location and the exact potential conflict that exists.
Yeah, good.
Any other comments? I'm fine with, so that's path one, I think, is was outlined to us. Cool. All right then. How about any of the other changes that Julie had outlined? December 31st, which I actually think is great because it kind of puts a time frame on it. If we needed to extend, we could talk about extending, but I think it's time is a little bit of the essence, I think. Carlo.
Sorry if I missed it. I didn't read word for word, but I definitely scanned through the document and, you know, agree with it. Was there somewhere in this, Julie, that how often they are not required to meet, but recommended to meet?
So what you're seeing on the screen in front of you is the motion, which doesn't include like the entire, all the information that was presented about how this committee would operate. And I actually don't remember off the top of my head if I included how often. I figured we might form the committee and then kind of talk that through and figure out if it needs to be weekly or bi-weekly or monthly, or just kind of understand like the enormity of the effort or the ease of the effort, and then kind of take it from there.
Thanks. I just want to make sure I didn't miss it. Thanks. Okay.
Awesome. Oh, you're muted.
All right.
Seemed quiet for a minute.
Thank you. Can I ask that motion be put back on the screen? I wanted to clarify something regarding the details.
Okay, and I also I put the entire policy on if anyone had any specific questions. There is no date as to how often it would meet, for instance.
So it says the first two make perfect sense. The third one is the 7 other members, and then there are 4 categories. I'd be inclined to be perhaps more more precise in which categories, which of the 4 categories are represented. We're talking about heavily residential neighborhoods, and we're talking about public streets. So when we're considering regulating them, you know, I would err on the side of having more representation from residents.
How do other members feel? I mean, I think these are the characteristics and qualifications, but it's up to us as a board to decide who the people are going to be. Right? We have to approve them. They've got to come through VASC and then come to the full board. So we kind of control what that makeup is going to be. I think that, so these are all important kind of components. I take your point on residents. I just don't want to I want to make sure that it's not, we're dealing with the change to the residential streets. We're also needing to figure out how to support kind of this close-in tier of parking. And remember, this leads back to the next tier out too, which is the whole discussion of how do we get more people able to come to the downtown and support our business downtown. So I know that the folks probably most affected negatively are residents, and the folks most affected positively are businesses. I'm not sure I could say what the makeup is, 2 and 2, 3 and 1, 1 and 3. How do other board members feel?
I'm having a hard time figuring this out. So you have the select board member and the CPDC member, which presumably will be a resident, but may not be a business owner. So you have 2 residents there. But I do think that's an important consideration to make sure we at least have balance and not it be overwhelmingly one way or the other.
Carla?
I mean, a lot of this stems from this ongoing issue for decades of parking, and we need representation of the downtown business owners. Not every business owner is a Reading resident, so they'll be left out just by default. I can think of Peter Sims offhand as someone who's been involved in this process and now cannot be part of this in an official capacity. He can be an advisory member, of course, and has a lot of institutional knowledge about this. But yeah, like Mark said, it's going to be up to us, and we'll see who's interested. It's nice to have a broad cross-section, but I want to see as many business owners represented as possible, and of course residents. But our main purpose is parking management. We're not going to solve anything 100%. So this list, if we narrow it down to just residents of the downtown and business owners / employees of the downtown, that's still pretty broad, but let's see who applies. I mean, I'm hoping it's the usual suspects who've been doing this work, but we may get other people that have some better knowledge that that could help. So I want to wait and see.
Yeah.
I'm fine with this. It gives us flexibility, I think, and allows us to have a good cross section of the community and the downtown community.
Vanessa?
I'd like to recommend that we have 4 residents of the downtown or greater downtown area, and then 1 each of the following 3 bullets, because the bottom 3 bullets all fall into the same general category of sort of representing the business interest, and the other 4 could be residents. Still gives us a nice balance, but gives us some guidelines as well.
I feel like we're working this too hard. I personally would rather kind of encourage folks to apply, see where the interest lies, and then through VASC and us, we decide who it should be, as opposed to defining it up front. Others?
Yeah, I don't want to define it. Not now, no.
Karen?
I'm fine with it the way it is.
Yeah, I think I would, I'm good as it is. So any further discussion on this before we bring it forward? Not appearing. Carlo, can I ask you to read the motion?
Move to approve the, oh no, sorry.
You're moving to the end a little fast.
Yeah, well, it's getting late. Sorry about that. Move that this, oh God, okay, take a breath. Move that the board create the Ad Hoc Parking Advisory Recommendations Committee, also known as PARC, as presented. Keep going.
Can we have a motion to just continue the reading?
Should I,
No,
yeah, I'd like to make
move
a,
to
continue with the reading of the rest of the motion.
Thanks, Karen. Second?
Second.
second.
Thanks, Ann. Okay, so the motion is on the table. Do we have a second for the motion?
Second.
Thanks, Vanessa. Any discussion? Not appearing. Okay, let's do a roll call vote to approve the motion as stated here. As I'm seeing you on the screen. So Carlo, I'm sorry, Carlo?
Yes.
Ann?
Yes.
Karen?
Yes.
Vanessa?
Yes.
Mark, yes. Thank you. All right, next.
You.
Thanks, Julie. Thank you for pushing.
And another nice acronym.
Great.
It rolls off the tongue more than some of our others. I appreciate it.
All right, and my screen has frozen. Why have you done this to me? Okay, I'm back. Birch Meadow Master Plan Update is next on the list. Hi, Jenna.
Hi there. How is everybody?
John.
So I'm just waiting for Mark to get into the room. He's our consultant, but thank you for having us tonight. I know that you guys are very, very busy. So we appreciate you taking the time to look over this master plan conceptual design that we've been working on for almost the past year. I think our first meeting was the week before the whole world basically was shut down. So we've been working on it for almost a year, and we've had a great team on the working group. We've had myself, Kevin Bowmiller, who is the Director of Community Services, Ryan Percival in Engineering, Chuck Tyrone in Conservation, Rich Hand, who is a member of our Rec Committee for several years and has also worked on the Master Planning Subcommittee for the past several years, Tom Zaya, who is the School Committee Liaison and our Athletic Director, Mike Wondolowski, who was our Youth Sports Liaison and the President of Reading Little League, and obviously our great consultants from Activitas, Mark Novak and Steve Christofouli. So We're just really, really happy to be here tonight and present to you what we have been working on. I know that some members of the board have already gone over the community presentation, have submitted feedback. So we hope that you enjoyed the presentation and hope to hear more from you tonight. And we'll turn it right over to Mark from Activity Task.
Good evening, everyone.
Oh, you got a bad echo.
I do?
Yep, it's fixed. Awesome. Thank you.
All right. I'm going to share my screen if that's all right.
Please.
Can everyone see the presentation?
Yep.
Yep.
Okay, let me just go to.
Yeah, can you go full screen on it?
Yes, I can. Is that better?
Yes.
Great. Okay, thank you very much. So tonight, I'll try to motor through the presentation. When we met with the community and presented the conceptual master plan for Birch Meadow Park, we spent about an hour going into a lot of the details. So I'll spare you a number of the details this evening, and we'll shoot to just hit on the highlights, if that's all right with you.
Yes, please.
So basically, we'll start with the process, talk about the historical review, the site analysis we performed, and the needs assessment that we performed with various stakeholders and user groups. And then we'll take a look at the conceptual master plan and its pieces. From there, we'll move on to potential phasing options, should any of the master plan portions of work be implemented. And then at the very end, a potential recommendation for the first implementation project out at Birch Meadow.
Mark, can I interrupt just for 1 sec?
Sure.
So Jen and Bob, just the process from here. So tonight we get this presentation. There's not a vote. Is there a hearing that's to follow? What's our plan to take it forward?
That's really up to the board. I believe I'll be an audience member here, but I'm fairly certain that nothing that's going to be described is in the capital plan. So that would be the next process, is to work it into a capital plan, presumably in the summer and the fall. And I don't know if the rec committee and the Birch Meadow effort has had sufficient public outreach. It's so difficult during the pandemic. It's really hard to know that. So, that's up to the board to help judge whether more of that is needed.
Got it. Thank you. Sorry to interrupt, Mark. I thought that might give perspective to the discussion.
Not a problem. Interrupt anytime. So the process. Before I get into the site analysis, just historically, this project, this whole master plan effort out at Birch Meadow didn't just start when we were retained back in pre-COVID days in early 2020. It's actually been ongoing since as early as 2007, so well over a decade now. 3 community surveys have been performed on what elements should be improved out at Birch Meadow and what the community would like to see done with the park. Those surveys occurred in 2004 and 2015, 2019, and also back in 2007, between 2007 and 2009. I think one of the really interesting things that we found was that each one of those surveys generally revealed the same results. So basically the park is, the highest users in the park are the active recreational groups, so specifically organized youth sports, at about 69% of the users. From there, it's largely passive recreation, so people using the trails and walking paths within the park to just passively recreate. And then finally, playground use was also fairly substantial at 43%. But the most desired upgrades to the park or improvements to the park were lighting. So improved lighting, both at the pathways and at the athletic fields. the addition of restrooms, and the improvement of circulation through enhancing pedestrian paths and trails in and around Birch Meadow. And then finally, one that was also mentioned back in the surveys was the additional synthetic turf field. And as you're aware, we worked on the project over at Turf 2 behind the high school. So that went a long way to help expand that field and create more functional use. But when we got into the needs assessment, turf came up again. So we'll get to that in a second. But before we really did anything, after the historical review, we took an in-depth review of the existing site. We performed a very detailed site analysis. We looked at all the different uses on the site, how each one of the facilities was accessed from parking. We looked at the condition of the fields. We looked at resource areas, what's protected by conservation. So obviously Castine Field, large portions of the Higgins Conservation Area, the Aberjona River, and then also where the Aberjona River pops up again north of the existing track and field over at the high school, in between Imagination Station parking lot and the track and field. We also looked at other things like handicap accessibility, existing topography, and stuff like that. So from there, we sat down, well, virtually sat down, with a number of different focus groups and stakeholders. And you can see all those on the left, ranging from town administration to recreation, all the way to youth sporting organizations. And what we did with them was we performed a SWOT analysis. So strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. We asked them those 4 questions about Birch Meadow. What do you think is a strength? What do you think is a weakness? What are some opportunities out there? And what are some of the proposed or foreseen challenges or threats that could be out there? And really what I'd like to focus on when we finished up those focus group interviews, if you go over to the right column, the 4 items in red were the highest, the most reoccurring responses in all of our interviews. They wanted more lighting. They wanted more passive recreation opportunities, so walkways and trails and paths. They wanted restrooms in a concession building and more turf. By far, those were the most common responses. So from there, we actually took pen to paper and started to take a look at the design for Birch Meadow. And we looked at a number of different options that we ran by the Master Plan Subcommittee. And in the end, we moved forward with a design that was, in our humble opinion, it was a reasonable design because it worked within the existing structure of Birch Meadow. So it didn't go in, wipe everything out, and recreate the wheel. We wanted to do something that, you know, acknowledged what the community said, while working within the existing framework of Birch Meadow, so that it could be a flexible plan that could be easily implemented in the years to come. So with that, we went to the community with the community presentation. I believe that was on November 18th, Jenna. And like I said, I don't know if you've seen the video on RCTV, but it was roughly an hour-long presentation, and then we fielded questions from the community for another half an hour or so. After that, we allowed the community to email either Jenna or myself with additional questions. And then we responded to those questions in memorandum form, which I believe was part of your packet that we sent out last week. So after that, there were a number of comments during the community presentation that caused us to take a look at some of the items in the master plan and reconsider some of the design elements. But generally, this is where we landed. This is the big overview, and I'll walk you around quickly through the 4 quadrants. But before I do that, I just want to talk a little bit about the overall structure of the plan. First and foremost is circulation. We wanted to take a look at access points. So if you see the stars on the plan, those are new proposed access points into the park. So down over by Turf 2, if you have been over there recently after that was constructed, there's a new access point and drop off associated over there. Up by Imagination Station, we're proposing to redo the parking lot in there, and it's calling for new proposed access points, something that really signifies that you're entering Birch Meadow Park. And then we're creating 2 strong spines running down through the middle of the park. One, which is almost there right now, running from the gravel parking lot of Imagination Station down to the high school, but also a really strong central spine that connects almost every element in the park, from Birch Meadow all the way down to the parking lot associated with Reading Memorial High School. And along that central spine is where we have secondary pathways, which is the yellow dashed lines running around the fields, which can be used for recreating and connect you to various other parts of the park. Based on conversations with Chuck Terone and Conservation, we worked in a number of pathways that around the resource areas and in the buffers that can be constructed out of permeable surfaces. We did look at creating a boardwalk crossing on the Aberjona. You know, the resources out at Birch Meadow are a true asset to the site. And the relationship between the resource areas and the high school is a tremendous educational opportunity. So a number of the projects within the proposed master plan are calling for the enhancement of the existing resource areas, both along the Aberjona, at Castine, and then also over at the Higgins Conservation Area. Finally, on the circulation topic, we also marked out what would be a 1-mile trail that kind of circulates in and around Birch Meadow Park. And this is something that could easily be shown on wayfinding signage or at a welcoming sign at one of our gateway access points. We looked at parking. Parking over at Imagination Station, a new parking lot over by the Birch Meadow School, existing parking on Bancroft Ave, expanded parking over at the Rise parking lot over by the high school, and then obviously all the parking over by the field house. Our idea was to try to expand access to the park from parking areas. We know that parking is an issue right now, specifically along Bancroft Avenue. It's a challenge for the abutters over there. So we wanted to do what we could to help distribute parking more evenly across the site. And that's largely being done by formalizing parking over by the Birch Meadow School, and then across the street from Coolidge Middle School in the Imagination Station parking lot. Prior to the community meeting, we actually had some parking along Birch Meadow Drive on the western end of Castine, but a number of community members voiced concerns about sight lines, so that was removed. We also had a limited amount of trailhead parking over on the Higgins Conservation Area side of the Birch Meadow Drive. But that was also removed based on discussions with Chuck. We turned it into just a small permeable surface trailhead now, with a walkway that connects up to the proposed parking over by Birch Meadow School. We added lighting to all the walkways just to increase safety. The park is currently in use to 10 p.m. at night, especially in the shoulder seasons. We're hoping to see more active use of the athletic facilities out here. So safe transit through the park is a critical thing to consider in the future developments. We've also proposed adding lights to all the major athletic facilities. And that does include Morton Field. I know that's something that was a little touchy with the residents along Woodland and also in the Bancroft and Winthrop area. So what we did in that area was we enhanced the vegetative buffer on the western and southern sides of Morton Field to help increase the vegetative screening between the field and the residential properties to limit any potential light impacts on them. I think it's important to note that all the lighting out here will be proposed to be LED lighting. So it's full cutoff. It's all shielded and reflectorized so that you're creating a true umbrella of light down onto the surfaces. And we can guarantee that there will be no spill onto abutting properties. So just quickly running through the four corners of the site, we're proposing a new synthetic turf field up behind Coolidge Middle School. That will be able to support 1 to 2 softball fields. Currently, some of the challenges down on Birch Meadow proper with the 3 combined softball fields is trying to program those at the same time doesn't work so well. And it's definitely a safety concern. So adding another softball field or 2 up at the Coolidge synthetic turf field will begin to relieve some of that stress on the fields over at Birch Meadow proper. We're formalizing the parking right now. The Imagination Station parking lot is just gravel and it directly runs down into the Abajorna. So we're formalizing that parking. Obviously, we're within the buffers here of the Abajorna. We'd have to go in front of conservation if this project was ever considered to become a real project. And stormwater management would have to be considered in terms of oil water separation, infiltration, and all that kind of stuff before it's discharged into the resource areas. We're looking at also maintaining some open space in this area to provide some separation between the parking lot and the resource area. And then a permeable walkway, which also delineates the area between passive recreation and the enhanced wetland area. Looking into the heart of the site, you can see the 2 softball fields with an overlapping multi-purpose full-size soccer field to be lit. This would be used for both just community softball use, men's softball, and also for girls softball for Reading High School. The entire facility would be lit. They would have their own batting cages associated with the facility, so they didn't have to walk over to the ones at Morton. They would have their own team areas, their own storage. Storage is a big issue on site right now. That it's kind of a hodgepodge of buildings, boxes, and sheds. So we're looking to standardize all of that. We're looking to create some open passive recreation space between the 2 synthetic turf facilities, maintaining the mature grove of trees in this general area in between softball and turf 2. The addition of a lacrosse wall centered on turf 2. And then obviously the restroom and concession building that is off that central spine that I talked about earlier. Over on the left side of this image is the enhancement of Castine. So as part of this project, we did have Epsilon Associates go out and delineate everything out there. The entire field is resource areas. Thanks, Chuck. You know, you were a big help in getting us through that portion. of the project. You know, we are showing some walks and a boardwalk crossing the Abajorna. As I discussed earlier, all this would have to be impervious and obviously go in front of conservation if any of that work was to be undertaken. Same thing with the central spine. You know, they're all within the resource area buffers. Another item that we actually changed after the community meeting is the location of the batting cages for Morton Field. Originally, we were bringing them down kind of behind the first base team area. But based on conversations with various baseball groups and Mike Wondolowski from Little League, the existing condition works really well for everyone because varsity athletics can, and Babe Ruth can use it. It's nice and close to Morton, but it's also in close proximity to the Little League field. Morton Field is generally in pretty good shape. It's maintained quite well by the Babe Ruth organization. As part of this project, we were looking at minimal cultural maintenance improvements, some fencing improvements, team area improvements, etc. And again, you know, all the paved surfaces in the back here would have to be pervious because of the proximity to the a stream that's tributary to the Abajorna. Along Bancroft, at the end of Bancroft, we created a turnaround and a drop-off area. Right now, there is a number of traffic concerns from the residents in that portion of the site. So the ability for cars, and every so often a bus comes down here, even though they shouldn't, but they have the opportunity now with a turnaround to get out of there without having to back up and have kids running around and you know, have to deal with that kind of a safety concern. That'll all be addressed once that turnaround can go in. Tennis courts are relatively new. They're in good shape. They're lit with Musco light structure green technology. So those are in good shape. So we're maintaining those. The existing playground is being recreated. We'll have new equipment for ages 2 to 5 and 5 to 12. I think one of the big things that we're looking at the playground is improving the surfacing, going from the mulch to a poured in place surface, and also looking at adding a perimeter fence. But a perimeter fence that's not at the edge of surfacing, it's in the landscape out at the edge. So it doesn't feel like the kids are playing in a playground cage of sorts. It feels like they're almost in their own little neck of the park. Looking at adding 8 pickleball courts. Pickleball is one of the fastest growing sports in the country right now from a recreational standpoint. So we're looking at adding 8 courts in this general location, immediately adjacent to the expanded Rise parking lot. Minimal improvements to the Little League field, just some seating and storage improvements, and then 2 new basketball courts that are to be located in this general area, adjacent to the parking lot on the central spine. Easy to see for Reading Police when they're going through the area. Those would be lit. And then finally, improvements on the hill to the existing rope course. The rope course is kind of a love-hate thing for many of the people in the Reading community, but it is part of the curriculum for the PE program at Reading High School. So that will be enhanced up on top of the hill. Couple other things to think about, obviously stormwater management in the parking lot, specifically over at Imagination Station, is something that needs to have some serious thought given to it during the actual design of the parking lot. But I think one of the big benefits of synthetic turf is that you can use the entire base of the synthetic turf field for stormwater management. something that could potentially help the larger stormwater management picture in that part of Reading. There was a comment from a resident in terms of high groundwater table out at Birch Meadow. We did go back and we looked at borings that were generated for the proposed lighting project a number of years ago. There are a few borings with slightly higher water table than we'd like to see. But you know, this could definitely be done. We could do chambers underneath these fields, even if it meant that we have to raise the fields up by a foot or two to meet the elevation of Birch Meadow Drive. So with that, just a couple of slides that show a summary of features. Basically, everything that Birch Meadow has now, we're either improving or increasing the number of items. And a couple of things that I'd like to point out: synthetic turf fields, that was something that was asked for a bunch. We're doubling the quantity. Sports lighting, number of fields, currently 3 fields are lit. We're upping that to 6 fields. Restrooms and concessions, currently there are none on site other than porta-johns. And we're looking at adding a permanent structure in the middle of the site. Walking paths, check. And then obviously parkway and gateway entrances, increasing it from 2 to 5. So potential project phasing. We look at project phasing, putting each of the projects into 3 buckets: critical, sustainable, and visionary. So critical are your maintenance and safety projects, something that you need to jump on relatively quickly. Sustainable are projects that will enhance the park, strategic changes to enhance the park. And then visionary are game changers. They're big projects that really affect not only Birch Meadow, but it would benefit the overall Reading recreational system. So the critical projects, as we saw it, were implementing the central spine through the middle of the park, doing the wetland enhancement and renovation of the Imagination Station parking lot, and then renovating Turf 1 and the track over at the high school, because that is reached the end of its useful life. Sustainable projects, improvements to the trails, trailhead, and wayfinding signage over at Higgins Conservation Area, parking and access down to the trailhead on Birch Meadow, enhancement of the Castine resource area, cultural maintenance improvements, storage improvements, and lights over at Morton, the ropes course, the basketball courts with lights, Little League field, storage improvements, seating areas, and then the parking, pickleball, and playground area. So one thing that I failed to mention before, if you look at the chart, basically we just gave dollar signs. We did full estimates for these, really conceptual estimates. You know, the central spine is a low to moderate cost. Lacrosse wall is a low cost, etc. It's kind of like TripAdvisor, I guess, for all these projects. The more dollar signs, the more costly the project could be. And something else to note, the middle column talks about potential for phasing within the project. So take, for example, Morton Field. You know, you could do the lights without doing the walkways and improvements to the team areas and without doing the storage. So, you know, we've broken it down into some pretty big chunks, but there is ways to phase within the project. And then finally, the visionary projects, and we're calling the visionary projects the softball multi-purpose fields right off of Birch Meadow Drive, and also the synthetic turf field behind Coolidge Middle School. Again, you can phase both of these, and there's the potential for for outside funding. So with that, how do we tie this all back up? If we recall, based on the 3 community surveys that were performed from 2007 to 2019, and from all the needs assessment, stakeholder user group meetings, community meetings, and the SWOT analysis that we performed, the 4 big items were more fields with lighting, more lighting in particular, not just at fields, but also on walkways, more passive recreational opportunities, and then some sort of structure out there that has restrooms. And then, number 4 was turf, more turf. But basically the top 3 we're hitting by and large with your critical projects, something that are relatively in the low to medium cost range, and something that it probably makes sense to look at in the not too distant future. So that was the master plan. And based on conversations with the Recreation Committee and the Master Plan Subcommittee, a potential first project was identified and also voted on by the Recreation Committee if the board decided to put something forward over the summer for the fall town meeting. And that project is the Central Spine Walkway that provides a connection from Birch Meadow down to the parking lot over at Reading Memorial High School. It aligns with the master plan. It prioritizes basically 2 projects. It prioritizes the Central Spine, which is a major circulation element within the project, and also includes the restroom building and outdoor pavilion, which can be used for picnics, concessions, etc. The walkway is approximately 1,140 feet long. It would be anywhere between 8 to 10 feet wide. Portions of it will have to be permeable paving due to proximity to Castine and the Aberjorna. The entire project would have to go in front of conservation, if not other regulatory boards in town, in order to get the design reviewed and approved. The support structure is centrally located in the site, so it'll be able to service Turf 2, the multi-purpose fields, the courts, Morton Field. It's in a really great location. And the entire walkway would be lit with pedestrian lighting. So, not only would this first project basically have 2 projects in one, a building and a walkway, but it's also hitting on the major elements that the community said they would like to see out there. Improved lighting, circulation, and adding a structure with restrooms. And something that we didn't talk about in the presentation was, I know a number of the board members have mentioned adding some sustainable elements to the plan, and that was a great suggestion. Our memo recommends that at least 2 of the parking lots have electric vehicle charging stations as various parking lots are improved over the next several years. But the building itself, we could implement some sustainable measures in photovoltaic cells on the roof, the use of standing seam metal roofing, which is low maintenance, increases the longevity of the building. So that's another item that would be implemented or would be considered for implementation if the town had decided to move forward with this project. And with that, I'm done. Sorry, it took a little bit longer than I had hoped.
Thanks, Mark. Board members, questions, comments? Let me start if I could. So first, This is fantastic. I think it's very well thought out. It's complete. I like the notion of phasing, obviously, because we wouldn't have any choice anyway. You answered my question on walkways just toward the end there, but I wanted to ask a specific question. Is 8 to 10 feet sufficient? Let me back up. Did you guys develop kind of expected usage patterns, numbers of people and things like that? And then that kind of leads into this question about, is 8 to 10 feet sufficient in terms of width? Does it allow for strollers going both ways? Does it, I assume that this is not bicycles.
The main, are you done? I'm sorry.
Yes, yes.
The main central spine there at 8 to 10 feet is actually wide enough so we could get a maintenance vehicle down there. We had a number of discussions about potentially bringing in food trucks for larger events out on site. So it would be large enough to get a food truck from the traveled way onto the site. They'd actually have to pull off into an area. But that right now is just a conceptual number. I think once it gets to true design, we would have to take a more in-depth look, or whoever your consultant is, would have to take a more in-depth look at, new impervious areas. We'd have to look at, we envision this being used by bicycles as well, in terms of the central spine. The secondary pathways, not so much. I'm sure they will be, but not. It wasn't intended for bicycle use. So the 8 to 10 feet is really just a conceptual starting point.
Okay, and very much related to that, the issue of emergency vehicles, police, fire, EMS. Have they already seen this and offered feedback to you, and also PTTTF, in particular thinking about the roundabout turnaround and things like that, and managing traffic on smaller streets?
No, we haven't gone in front of any emergency services to have them review the plan. Again, it's just conceptual in nature. Once a project is kind of slated for development, then we would take the plans and walk them through town hall and all the appropriate boards and organizations.
Okay. Last question, then I'll allow others. Picnic and open space. So this is pretty highly utilized space as I look at it. I didn't really see much that isn't either a field or a trail or a concession stand.
Yeah.
Is there, and you've got your checkbox and you talk about picnic space. Is there picnic space?
Yeah, so I mean, we're maintaining the grove, the areas in between the turf fields. Right now are programmed use. I believe they're used, Jenna, by Pop Warner football. And, right now, if you can see where my cursor is, there's a softball field. So, this whole wedge of area, we were proposing to turn that back into open space, more park space, create some topography, some undulations in the land, to create some physical separation between the two active recreational elements. And also up south of the new Imagination Station parking lot. A number of community members were wondering why that wasn't programmed as a playground or a dog park or something along those lines. I think to a certain extent, it's a highly programmed park right now, but we do have to leave some openings here and there for passive recreation, and also to create a little bit of flexibility in the plan so that, as things evolve, 10 years from now, Reading, the community is going to be different. Their wants, needs, and desires are going to be different. So, the plan itself has to have a flexible nature to it, so that things can be adjusted over time.
Thanks, Mark. Other board members? Vanessa.
Thanks, Mark. Great presentation. I attended the one in the fall, October, November. Love seeing some of the sustainability issues that got brought up there. So thanks very much for adding that. I have 4 questions. You mentioned that there is possibility for outside funding sources. Can you clarify what that means?
So it could be a donor. It could be funding campaigns by youth organizations. It could be going after a grant. It doesn't necessarily, anything other than something that's slated in the capital plan.
Okay. Great, thank you. So out of curiosity, I mean, you talked about lighting in some of these pathways. Given how the fields themselves, the spaces are pretty dense, is there a need for lighting on these pathways, considering that most of these fields are already lighted through the evening into early night?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think, you know, it depends on how we move forward with the lighting plan out here. If we start to look at the sports facilities and doing MUSCO systems for all these sports facilities, the really great thing about MUSCO systems is their controllability and their programmability. Everything can be operated and turned on and turned off from a cell phone these days. So, you know, Morton Field, for example, if Morton Field is not being used on a Friday night, you know, in April at 8 o'clock, there's no reason for those lights to be on. The town's just spending money to light an empty space. So I think in that condition, you know, we would want to have some lower level pedestrian lights. Again, LED lights, they're not, you know, they don't use a lot of energy, and they're relatively inexpensive to install. Okay,
great, thank you. I know you're recommending the central spine going in first. It makes a lot of sense from a connectivity perspective, but I'm curious why perhaps other improvements, like say the pickleball courts or the lacrosse water, things like that, weren't prioritized first?
I think the biggest thing for us as a group was that the central spine just hits on so many elements in one project. It improves circulation through the park and passive recreational opportunities. It adds lighting, and it adds the building with restrooms. So, you know, in the grand scheme of things, it's a quick hit project to address a number of the community's desires.
Okay, great, thank you. And then the last one is just a comment, which is that for any new structure that we're planning on putting in here, the pavilion is a great example. It is, you know, since we're starting construction from zero, I would love to see that be, you know, whatever top of the line sustainability efforts that we can do there, whether it's rainwater, composting, I mean, whatever is possible for this small structure, I would love to see that as an example of the direction the town is going in. So thank you.
Yeah,
great presentation.
Thank you.
Thanks, Vanessa. Other board members, questions, comments? Karen, and then Carl.
Sure, thank you. Okay, great. This is very exciting. I echo a lot of the comments that Vanessa just made. I love, thank you for thinking about sustainable options for that structure and bathrooms. Like, I don't know which one's more important, bathrooms or the solar panels. Like, I'm torn. And yeah, that roofing makes a lot of sense. And again, I mentioned last night, we had people asking about, you know, safe places, adults asking for safe places to bicycle. So I could see where that spine maybe would connect to the neighborhood or just the perimeter. I'm just thinking that might be a way we hit that as well. One of the questions, there was a good question about has our safety officers reviewed this. When will this be presented to the neighbors as well so they can ask these great questions about lighting and layers and timing and not using them when they're not needed? We want to make sure those Birch Meadow neighbors can ask those questions, especially.
they asked, a number of them attended the community presentation, and they definitely asked questions during that presentation. All of them were notified of that meeting. I believe Jenna sent out a, Jenna, you sent out a public meeting notice to all abutters of Birch Meadow, did you not?
Yes, I sent them all letters.
Okay, that's really great. But I mean, we just need to keep that up because people are busy, and this is really exciting, but I'm so glad you did that. CPA funding, another one of Vanessa's questions. This is another, you know, a $1 million project might be manageable. For the whole project, you know, CPA is certainly something, you know, seems to be coming up over and over again that we might want to look into as a way to make this happen. I appreciate the effort and thought put into permeable paving. And, you know, I think I would expect Conscom would weigh into that. I've been reading that, you know, it could sometimes be offset with less work and expense required for storm drainage or mitigation, but I leave that to the experts. But I thank you. I really appreciate this. It's a great presentation. It's exciting.
Yeah, thank you. And I agree with the CPA funding aspect. You know, we've been doing a lot of that with a number of different communities in the greater Boston area recently. And it's a tremendous avenue for open space and recreational uses.
And suddenly they have a lot of money again. Carlo.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I just want to thank everybody who's been working on this. Great presentation. Like I said, I saw it a few weeks ago. It's great to get something started. I know nothing's been officially started yet, but I think all the people that have been involved in this over the years, staff, volunteers, and whatnot, it's a lot of work. So I think the town is ready to get some things done. And I hope over the next year, we can fund this and move it forward. Thanks.
Thank you.
Well, any other comments? Vanessa?
Thanks, Mark. From a next steps perspective, I know when this was done over 10 years ago, I think there were multiple hearings before the final master plan got approved. What is and this may be a better question for Jenna or Bob, what are the next steps for this? I mean, I think we can all agree it's phenomenal. We'd love to see all of these improvements. What's next?
Somebody win the lottery.
And they have to take a second step after that, but yeah. So I guess for tonight, in terms of the board's actions, kind of back to the first question at the top of this was, you know, where would it go next? How do we proceed? So from my perspective, I'd love to digest a little bit more, but I'd also suggest that even more opportunity to share with the community. I appreciate the length of the packet that you put in there. There were a number of people who wrote very detailed descriptions of their concerns, shall I say,
yeah.
Which was great because it was very helpful to understand that perspective. And I forget who maybe Vanessa, was it you who mentioned just, or Karen, just sharing it back to the community, because I think you have answered a number of the questions or addressed a number of those questions. And I think that would be helpful. In some way, shape, or form, we'll be asking taxpayers to fund, you know, a good portion of this, you know, as little as possible, but, you know, as much as is necessary. So we want to make sure that people are engaged. And to your point on finding private donation sources, I would imagine that there'll be some people that see particular aspects of this and may feel that they want to really engage in fundraising for it. And that would be fantastic. I mean, that may be the best outcome, and that may be the way that some of the later things are later in the process get moved earlier as a result of some of that effort. So that would be great. I would encourage us to, if I can call it, advertising it a bit more first, kind of sharing it a bit more. I mean, seeking input as well as sharing. And then talking, as Bob said, about what our appetite would be for parts of phase one, talking about capital aspects for it, and getting it in front of town meeting, probably the November timeframe. I think that'd be wonderful. Other board member thoughts? Oh, sorry, Bob.
I just have a question, and I apologize for not knowing the answer. Jenna, has the school committee seen this? I know you mentioned Tom Zaya was kind of their liaison.
I can't speak to whether or not the school committee has seen the presentation. I do know that our school committee liaison, John Parks, hasn't been coming to a lot of our meetings. So I'm not sure if he relayed it on to anybody, but I can't answer that question either. I don't know.
Okay, well, that's clearly a next step.
Absolutely. Yep. I think the school committee should definitely be engaged and kind of buy in. And these are community projects. This has got to get everybody kind of thinking and singing the same way.
Well, and some of the work discussed is technically school land.
Yeah, I think the high ropes course and low ropes course is school land, and the stadium turf and the track. Everything else is town, to my knowledge. Is that
How about
right, Mark?
Coolidge?
The field behind Coolidge?
Yeah.
That, to my knowledge, is also town, because
okay.
yeah, we rent that.
Okay.
And maintain it.
Yeah, let me know if you need a hand connecting to the schools.
Just a quick question of Kevin, just for a second, then let me call on you, Karen. Kevin, in terms of thinking about some of the adult services, that didn't come out right at all, did it? Thinking about older adults in the community and having the opportunity for passive recreation or active. I assume that the spine is a pretty interesting aspect from your perspective. Are there other things that you wanted to kind of add to it or talk about here?
No, again, just the walking, like you said, the passive is, we're an aging population in a lot of ways. So, they're not all looking to play soccer. So yes, the walkways is, I think will be important down the road.
Cool. Thanks. Karen.
Oh, I was just going to ask, so then can we make sure we get this on the website and do some publicizing on social media from the town, and maybe even provide a link to the RCTV component when it is published?
Yes,
yeah, just let them know. I know we have the most fascinating meetings ever, but might just want to tell them where this part starts.
Yes, and we have sent out email blasts to all of our families. All of this information can be found on a link. We've posted a lot of the working group meeting minutes as well as the community presentation on the town website. So I can send that to Jane Wellman, and maybe she can get it up on social media as well.
Anything else from the board? Cool. So just thinking through next steps for a minute. So Jenna, you're going to get the school community or school committee engaged in activities. We've now talked a lot about getting more community access to it in terms of letting them watch presentations, making sure we've solicited additional input. Then I guess probably we as a board need to start talking about capital planning for it. Not in February, but perhaps soon thereafter, and think about it certainly for summer. And then have it prepared for whatever we're thinking by for November town meeting. Sound good?
Great.
Vanessa?
How much more are we planning on changing, editing, updating this? I would love to see more language around the sustainability factor for this, making sure that conservation is actively involved in any future discussions before we jump, you know, I agree that the capital discussion is important, but there's other players that need to be brought into this before this gets too much further.
So how, I guess not sure who to point this at. What's the best way to kind of add the dimension that Vanessa is talking about specifically to the presentation, but also to make sure that we're completely engaged. And I think public safety probably should be chiming in at that point also. How do we just kind of make sure that that's getting pushed through the system? Who's going to be the champion of this is the question. You may not have to answer
champion on the staff side.
Yeah, I can definitely circle in with public safety on the concerns tonight, as well as reach out to the school committee. I'm more than happy to spearhead that.
Yeah, and just any project, anything that's going to be implemented, conservation has been involved with us all along, and they will absolutely continue. We'll welcome we'll really push to get their input. I'm not going to try and slip anything by them. So yeah, Chuck has been a great job and contributed a lot to this plan in the past year.
So maybe we should put a placeholder into one of our agendas in maybe the mid to late March timeframe as kind of a follow-up with kind of all these activities continuing. We can take another look at it before we're doing capital planning and see what other inputs needed. Is that good for timeline? Thank you, folks, very much.
Thank you very much for the time tonight.
Thank you. Thanks for the time.
Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
Okay. Thanks, Mark.
You bet. I'm going to suggest that we take a couple-minute break here. But let me just come back to next is going to be the open space plan update, right? Right. Okay. I've got 9:16 on my clock. Can we come back at, is 9:20 too quick? Should 9:25? Should we go for let's go for 9:20. Let's see how close to 9:20 we can hit it. All right. So we will be in recess for about 5 minutes.
Mark, do you think there's a way to move quickly through our remaining agenda items or to defer some to another meeting? Because we've got a lot remaining.
Yeah, we just talked a little bit about that, about moving the restructuring the goals so that they'll just be kind of it won't be a presentation tonight.
Okay.
So we'll just have the open space Maylet in conservation and then close it or do the minutes and out. Yeah, and this agenda looked like it was finishing at 9:45. On paper, it looked great.
Yeah, I always think
Not funny, Mark. Fix it.
I play back the quote that you always play to me, Vanessa. Karen, are you back? Good thing I didn't say 9:25. Why don't we come back into session? We're back in session. Okay, so next on the agenda is the open space plan update. Who was the owner? Chuck, are you leading?
Yeah, I'm here, and I suspect that Kristen Moravec's here, but just, which I don't see her, is Kristen in the room?
Yeah, she's just joining, Chuck.
Sure, so we're updating the 2013 Open Space and Recreational Plan. We had a public meeting last night. We had a good attendance, broke out into working sessions to get some feedback from the commission. As part of this open space and master plan, we reached out to a consultant firm, which was Horsley and Witten, which is an engineering and environmental consulting firm. And we hired them, and our consultant is Krista Moravec. And I think she's on, and she's going to bring you through a presentation similar to the one we had at our public meeting last night.
Hello, everyone.
Hi, Krista.
I can begin if is everyone okay with that? Okay, great.
Please. Yeah, we're running a little bit late. We're sorry, and whatever you can help us appreciate it.
Yep. Going through technical, great. So let's see. So you did I saw that you had our presentation in the packet. So I think just to start off, why the town has an open space and recreation plan, it's really to enhance the benefits of open space and recreational resources. Economic benefits, proximity to parks, and open space enhances property values. It brings people into town and they will frequent other establishments. It obviously has environmental benefits. It's got, provides clean air, clean water, habitat for important species in the Commonwealth. And it also has social benefits as places where we can go and be active and see others in the community, places to gather. We also have a plan so we can understand where we've been. Are we meeting our goals? Are we enhancing the benefits of open space and recreation resources? Where do we need to be and how we're going to get there? So it's an action-based plan. It also supports efforts for acquiring funding. So having a current and approved plan, the town remains eligible for funding from the Division of Conservation Services. They are the overseer of open space and recreation plans. They are in the Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs. So just the town maintains eligibility for those programs, but it also is a good tool for other funding that is competitive. So it just documents the public process that you've gone through that effort, and these projects have public support. So when we talk about open space, that can mean different things for different people. So for the open space and recreation plan, we're talking about public and privately owned undeveloped lands, and they have important aspects that are related to conservation or natural features, recreation, agriculture, or they have scenic values, or they contribute to the overall character from town. So this is from DCS's guidance for the open space and recreation plan. So we use this when we're looking at those resources in town. So public and private undeveloped lands. I think recreation is a little more easy to understand. Indoor and outdoor facilities, parks, playgrounds, ball courts, those types of things, fields. The town's current plan was approved in 2013. There are 11 sections that are required. I won't go through all of them, but just to some highlights, there is a snapshot of town conditions, socioeconomic statistics and things of that nature, resource inventories, environmental inventories, the open space and recreational resource inventories, documents needs, so needs for natural resource protection, needs of the community, needs at the municipal level to help manage and maintain these resources, goals and objectives, very important. And then there's a 7-year action plan, and this identifies specific actions, who is going to lead or be responsible for moving those actions forward, and there are priorities and timeframes associated with that. This is a quick overview of our process. So we review the current plan, we look at a lot of new data and studies and reports that the town has done since that last update, getting all that information in there. We reach out to town staff and stakeholders. We do our first round of public input, which Chuck talked about, that we did last night. And that's we're asking about community needs. So getting an understanding of what those are. We take that information, we start drafting a plan, and we bring it back out to the public. Did we get it right? Was there anything missing? We also distribute drafts for comment and support, and there are required entities. So that would be yourself, so the select board, as well as the planning board, and the regional planning agency, which is for Reading is the Metropolitan Area Planning Council, MAPC. That packet is then sent to DCS for their review and approval. So we do have a website, so readingopenSpaceandRec.com. This is where we post all things related to the update and the update process. So draft materials, announcements of our events and opportunities for public input. We'll be putting our summaries from last night's workshop up on this page as well. In addition to the workshop, we also had a survey that was out since October. We closed it a couple weeks ago, and we really were trying to get an understanding of people's experiences in Reading's open space and recreational areas. What new opportunities do they think that the town should consider? And then the public workshop last night, again, asking what is the town doing really well with open space and recreation? What could be better? And then the new ideas and opportunities that we want to hear about. So the big ideas. And with that, so this is a new slide that I snuck in from your packet, just our next steps. Since we had I think when I created that presentation, we hadn't had the workshop yet or had closed the survey. So we're going to compile all that public input, organize it, and sort of get our ideas and our themes, continue to talk with town staff and stakeholders, and put together a draft plan and come back out to the public in the spring. And with that's my quick presentation, and I'm happy to take any questions.
That was awesome. Thank you. One of the questions.
I'm going to stop sharing my screen so we can see each other.
So when you talk about coming back out to the public, what format is that? Is that reaching out to have some public meetings, potentially additional presentations, surveys, putting something up on YouTube?
Yep. So yeah, we're sort of in a strange time still. So we're still sort of working virtual, but that is the intent, is to sort of get a little creative. Sometimes we'll do a public, like an open house where people will drop in. It's a lot of, it's talking about the action plan. So there's a lot of information for people to digest. So we'll talk with the town staff that we're working with and just really figure out what would be best for Reading. And if it's a public meeting works, I like open houses. I don't know if we'll be able to do those in person, but we have done some virtual open houses where people can have all the information. We can use the project website as a platform for that. And they can view it on their own time, and we can provide either a survey or other form where people can provide their feedback.
Awesome. And is the Birch Meadow plan somehow coordinated with the activities that you're doing here?
Right. So we want to document progress on all of those types of projects and just kind of where it's at. So it is a 7-year plan. That's our time frame for this. And if they're, just keep the momentum forward and any work that needs to be done. If there's something about next steps that we want to include, looking out into the future, they can be general, but just to keep support for that moving forward. But yeah, any efforts that are going on, we want to capture all of that in the plan.
And one last question related to, you mentioned kind of DCS for funding, potential funding sources. Are there other sources of funds that get pursued as part of this project as well? And we could, CPA obviously would be another potential. Yep. Are there other sources that are under consideration as part of this for the 7-year plan?
So we'll look at the actions. And so part of our action plan will identify a potential source. So, if there's specific grants for, if there's stormwater activities that the town wants to undertake, we can look at different funding sources for that. It really, we look at the action plan and try to fit those sources with that. Sometimes some actions don't require funding. They're just part of the everyday operations of a department. So we try to do a mix of items that perhaps might need funding, but also things that are low cost or no cost.
Chuck, did I see you wanted to chime in? But you are muted.
No, just having it.
Sorry, I just
wanted to mention, this was a wonderful presentation. Thank you.
Having the open space plan approved by the state would, have us available from DSC grants. And I believe some of those grants that tie into the Birch Meadow master plan could pay for some ADA paths, which was part of that plan. And, with that plan, with the Birch Meadow master plan, a lot of things get talked about, like the fields and whatnot, and the things around the edges, which is like the sustainability stuff and the paths and the environmental things. Those need to be worked in, and I think we can work in those things with some grants, and having the open space and recreational plan will help us do that.
Awesome. Thanks. I'm sorry, Vanessa, I didn't mean to chop you.
No, I didn't have a comment. I just had an itch. I went like this. That was it. Wonderful presentation. Thank you.
Too carefully. Any other board comments, questions? Excellent. Thank you, folks. Much appreciated. Thank you for the update.
Thank you. Thank you. Have a good night, everyone.
Will do. Thanks. Okay, Maylet Land.
So
I'll start. Just a couple words from Town Council, and then I'm going to turn it back to you, Chuck. The board is and the community is facing a 2-step process to rectify some things that were done in the 1930s that were short. Hopefully next meeting, the board will vote to determine that the Maylet land is no longer needed for the purpose it was acquired and should be transferred for the Conservation Commission. So that's step one, and a fairly simple one. You'll have to understand why, but that's just so that that's on your agenda. And then the second action would be an article at town meeting. The town meeting article is generally straightforward, but a complication is in the taking done 80, 90 years ago. It also diffused all the easements. So we have to reestablish easements for DPW. So that's the only real complicated language that you'll see in the draft warrant. Otherwise, Chuck, it's all yours.
Sure, and thank you, Bob, for that. Essentially, what Bob has outlined is what we want. The Millette land is part of the Millette Morgan Psalms land. It's 4 parcels. It's located between Willow, Lowell, Hunt Vine, Lee Street. It's in that area. The Trails Committee just finished a Abidjona Headwaters Trail that connects Willow Street, kind of the Austin Prep area with the depot area. And so in the past, there's been attempts to kind of get this land, these final 2 parcels. There's 4 parcels, 2 are deeded to the Conservation Commission. There's 2 that are deeded to the town, but for conservation purposes. And there's been 3 attempts over the past, as I see it, to have this happen. So the Conservation Commission, I hope you read the packet, and I'm making this kind of short because I heard that someone wanted to make this a short, speed up everything. But, the Conservation Commission would respectfully request that you support the land transfer and bring it to the spring 2021 town meeting and finally have this happen. And some of the reasons why we want to have that happen as a Conservation Commission is just to, it's easier for us to maintain the land if one of the owners, if all of the owners is the Conservation Commission, instead of having to come to the select board as we did with the trail project. And I guess secondly, that this land is pretty much inundated with wetlands. It's bisected by the Abidjona River. It's conservation land for sure. There's nothing else that can really happen there. I think it's bordered on the south by the Thean Bird Sanctuary. It's a really nice spot, and for that and for the like the color and the texture of what it's going to be, it wouldn't change with this transfer. It would just make it easier to manage. So that's the request. I know Mike Flynn's on the line. I don't know if I don't want to take all the time, Mike. So if you have something to say.
No, Chuck, I think you put it perfectly. I mean, Chuck and Bob have put a lot of hard work in kind of summarizing this. Ultimately, this, the first time that this came before me was when the Trails Committee came to us to do the new path. We realized that we didn't have the right to approve all of the work that was out there, and we had to come to the select board to actually get some additional approvals. Just like Chuck said, this is hopefully a process that makes a lot more sense as far as streamlining and completing something that we've been trying to do for more than 35 years now. So hopefully we can just do it correctly.
Maybe this is the year.
Yeah.
That'd be great.
Bob, is it clear that the select board has control of these parcels?
Yes.
Okay. And then second question, is there cleanup that's required in some of the areas, either the ones that are under the board control or not? And if so, do we need to take that into account kind of before our transfer would take place, or is it just something we need to deal with? You guys aware of, is there some cleanup that's required in that area? This is the stuff that's by what used to be the PNS, right across the street from them.
Oh, I think I know what you're talking about. That might be a DPW question. I'm not aware of that.
Okay, all right. So, but it wouldn't relate to conservation. We need to deal with
it. Would, but
okay.
we're not aware of any cleanup.
Okay, we should just make sure of that.
Maybe that's a good thing, Mark.
Yeah, no, I know that a couple of residents had approached me at one point about it. So we probably need to take a look just to make sure of that. Board members, questions? Go ahead, Carlo.
Thanks. Just to be clear what you're asking, you mean cleanup, there was construction debris, or what kind of cleanup? You're just curious what you're referring to.
Yeah, some kind of debris. I don't know what it is, but I think there's some debris there. And I think it's construction related.
Okay.
But I can see something that's not dirt. That's as far as I can go. So next steps would be to put this on to our next agenda to make sure we have all the background, bring it to a vote, and then if we take it forward, it would go forward to town meeting for approval.
That's right.
Okay.
And it's not urgent for your next meeting, but if you do that, then the town meeting write-up can be more complete.
Okay, great. We'll put that on. Any last questions? No, great. Thank you, folks.
All right, thank you.
Draft DPW conservation protocols, tree safety within conservation jurisdictional areas. Janie, are you leading this one?
Group effort, but I guess, yes, we'll start. Yeah, we started meeting on this back last spring. And when I say we, Chuck Tyrone, Mike Flynn, the conservation chair, and Julie Mercy, Mike Hannaford, the tree warden, Chris Cole, and myself, and felt it was important to create a policy that would kind of help define the process for communicating. Maintenance and removal of trees on conservation land that falls under the commission. And that's the key thing, I think, with the policy, is that these trees, all of them fall under the commission. So, you know, Mike Hannaford takes care of trees that are, you know, shade trees, parks, cemeteries, you know, street side, but these would fall under the commission. But, you know, just they look to our assistance, whether or not they're healthy trees, you know, whether or not they need to get taken down, can we do that, that type of thing. So that's why the need for this type of a policy. Did you want me to go through all the points on it, or?
I think probably the board members may have questions, and we also had a couple of people join us early in the meeting with some comments.
Yeah, I heard them. Yeah.
Okay, so this point 8 or part 8 in particular, and maybe you guys can talk through what you're envisioning there. And since you heard the two comments, but they really focused, I think, on how would they take action, and if they're the source of funds, they don't have any funds.
Well, they have some funds, but that's actually would be, so the way this started was we started looking at, you know, every type of tree request that we receive, let's say, under conservation. And this happened to be one of them. We do get requests to clear a trail if a tree falls. And you know, just so you know, we generally do that. We're able to do it, and so it's not a top priority because you know, I'm going to emphasize we only have 3 people in our tree department. So, you know, this is sort of in addition to all of the Chapter 87 trees that Mike oversees. Then he goes into the conservation and helps, you know, whenever possible. So the trails, you know, we've gotten requests, and I'll just let people know that if we can do it, if he can put it in his schedule and he can do it in a short turnaround, he does that. But if not, it's not the top priority. Okay, so as we were kind of putting together the policy last spring, there was a tree in a trail, and I kept on getting these requests. And he said, you know, he was just flooded because he also, his guys also do, you know, it was around Memorial Day, they do all of that. So I just kept on, you know, telling the trails person and residents that asked whatever that we'll try to get to it, but it's not going to fall on the trail. Okay. And so we kind of discussed, like, how do we want to look at this going forward? So, you know, we'll do it if we can do it. If we have the funds, we will, you know, rent the equipment, because it's unique equipment that has to go down a trail. It's not, we can't do it with the bucket truck. It's a spider lift, which is about $1,000 a day to rent. So, you know, it's just not, you know, I know people use the trails, they use the town forest. It's just not the top priority for us. We maintain the roads for you know, fire, but not the trails. But we'll help out with the trails when we can. So that's kind of where that came from, is if we can do it, we do it. If we have the funds, we'll to rent, you know, a piece of equipment to do it, we'll do that. And then last, we would look to say, okay, if we don't have any of that available and you really want this trail open, then, you know, we would look to your funds to do it. That hasn't happened. You know, I can't foresee that happening, but I also felt like I wanted some out there. Because, you know, just for instance, last year, you know, we overspent that line item just because it's been growing so much, but more than double than what we have budgeted. So, you know, I just have to be careful about what we promise out there that we can do, you know. So
And
that's.
what was, just give us a ballpark, how much was that line on the double?
So it was 12,000, we spent 28.
And has it been trending up? Has there just been more work
Yeah,
to do?
there's been just more requests, and you know, like our guys are great, but there's some unique times that trees that we have to, you know, bring in a piece of equipment. There was a tree at Matera Cabin that cost us $10,000. We had to you know, subcontract that out because we didn't have that type of equipment to take it down. I mean, that's our budget for the year, right? So this year it's 15,000. So we went up in FY21. So it's up a little bit more.
Got it. And just to clarify, if there's a tree that's blocking a trail, is that dealt with differently from one it's downed and it's not blocking, but it's.
Yeah, we would ignore the one that's actually
Off to the
down.
side.
Yeah,
Okay, it's only blocking.
Yeah, but if something is, you know, especially if something's dangerous, he's either going to mark it out or, you know, block it off somehow or something. You know, he went out and checked it out that time we got the calls, but it just wasn't going to, you know, it wasn't an immediate safety risk. So he said, I'll address it, you know, and I can do it with the guys I have, because he doesn't have the equipment. So all of that is manual. You know, the guys have to be able to take down the trees manually. So
thanks. Karen, I know you had some comments.
Yeah. So I had asked to definitely hear from the tree warden on this. I mean, he's instrumental and he's a critical part, and Chuck is here, and
well, he had every intention of being here, Karen, but he actually worked 30-something hours straight and went home at 3, and he was scheduled to come. I told him 8:40, but where you're running off, he just was trying to stay awake. I'm just going to tell you, he just couldn't stay awake. So I guess, what did you want to hear about? Because I did say
I want to hear, you know, I want to hear from the tree warden. So I don't know if he could come next week. This makes no sense. I value his expertise. He is central. You know, reading through the policy, he's involved in so much of it. Like, we need to hear that he's good with this and he thinks this is going to work. And
yeah, well, he definitely signed off on it. I guess, you know, barring the snowstorm we just had, he would have been here. So
yeah, I think, you know, tonight is not a vote. Tonight's starting a discussion. I think we should raise whatever concerns we have at this point. And one of them is we just want to make sure that we have an opportunity to hear from him directly, kind of before we take a vote on it. But I see, Chuck, you've got your hand up.
Oh, sure. I was just gonna let the committee know that the Trails Committee doesn't have any direct contact with the DPW department or the Conservation Commission. So I don't sit at their meetings, and I don't think one of the DPW sits at their meetings. So maybe for that reason, they were kind of left out of this a little bit. I'll tell you my spin on what I think happened is I think that we wanted to include the Trails Committee, because trails really start with them. They maintain the trails. They do an excellent job. They're very motivated. And if we were talking about trails, you know, I could see asking Will or asking someone on the Trails Committee to check out the tree and let me know what they thought about it. And if they said, well, you know, it's too much for us, then to get the DPW involved. I don't know where the money part came in. I don't think it, you know, I don't think I noticed it when it came in, or if I did, I thought it might have been something as if like the Town Forest Committee was able to appropriate funds for the red pine removal, which didn't come out of their budget, came from something else. And so I guess that's what I was thinking about. But, you know, it certainly needs to be explored. They shouldn't use that minuscule little amount of $1,500 to $2,500, whatever they get, to run their, you know, to maintain those trails, to additionally take down trees. Yeah, I mean, I think that there's a lot of trees that need to come down. I think collaborating and talking with the Trails Committee, the Town Forest Committee, DPW, and the Conservation Commission is an important step to kind of getting our hands around, you know, what kind of numbers are we actually talking about to not only maintain our trails, but to have a budget that doesn't create friction amongst the committees and the departments.
Karen, were you?
Yeah, just so Town Forest as well. Can somebody help me? Is Will on the Trails Committee or on the Town Forest Committee?
Will's on the Trails Committee.
Okay, so we haven't heard from the Town Forest Committee. So have they had a chance to review this?
Well, the Town Forest Committee, mean for them to maintain the trails?
Nope,
Because
just asking if they've had a chance to review this policy because it's Town Forest is specifically mentioned in it.
I'm going to say no.
Okay.
But they, yeah.
Because I can find out when their next meeting is and we should get it out to them. So I didn't even realize, I have to be quite honest, when we got the email from the Trails Committee, I just didn't think about the additional interactions besides DPW and Conservation Commission. And I think we want to make sure that this policy has all the right people looking at it and nodding their heads and saying this makes sense.
Yeah, and just to add to that, in the issue of, I think Chuck's point, which is what's out there that needs to be done. You know, what do we anticipate? You know, not the blue sky forecast of it, but just saying, yikes, there's a bunch of work that we just haven't got to. Here's the impact on the trails and things, and you know, it may be that. Is there a revolving fund for trails that exists currently? Is that where that money comes from? The 1,500? No.
No.
Okay. So we've got more conservation land. We got more stuff going on. We may need to kind of reassess what's happening and how to maintain it better.
And just a quick point of clarification. Is this, so we had that situation with a homeowner up on North Main, and was that conservation, that was conservation land, the trees that were addressed by DPW, then more trees were brought before Conservation Commission and they approved the owner taking it down, and then we were asked to pay for some more. Is this policy gonna make sure that when the Conservation Commission says, you know, we're gonna give you permission to take down the trees, but understand homeowner, like the tree warden has determined they're not a danger, this is your responsibility if you wanna do it?
Yes. Yeah,
Okay.
that's addressed in here.
I also agree. I think this gives us a clear path to discuss the issue prior to making like a public statement to that homeowner and, you know, understand the process. And that's what it's all about. I mean, conservation is not, I always say everybody knows they need to get a building permit, but they're very surprised when they need to get a conservation permit, and you have to kind of explain that to them. So conservation needs to be explained, and you know, that's part of what we're going through here with this tree policy and, you know, working with each other. And so that's
Okay,
how I
I
see it.
certainly understand that taking down trees is incredibly expensive. So I think this is an area we just have to all be cognizant of that.
Vanessa.
Thanks, Mark. So I had a couple of questions and comments. So Jane, you had mentioned that from a maintenance perspective, there's a cost issue, but you separately mentioned a staffing issue. Is it one or the other? Is it both?
No, it's generally the cost to outsource when we can't do it, because whenever we can do it, we'll do it. So we have three folks in our forestry division that are highly trained. That's not really the issue. Sometimes it's a timing issue because those three guys also do all the holiday lights. So those are, you know, half a dozen weeks a year that they're not doing that. They're not doing trees, let's say, right? But they are constantly trimming, removing, planting. So whenever, you know, we can, it's just, we have to prioritize. And if something is in a trail that's not an emergency to us, unless it's a safety thing, you know, but because people use the trails, we were getting a lot of calls on it. I knew about it, but it's like constant calls. But it's not, you know, if it's something on the side of the road, if it's in a, you know, cemetery, at school, even the conservation land can be an emergency. This particular tree wasn't. So it was just a way of giving us an avenue of saying, okay, you know, it's not a funding thing right now. It's a timing thing. You want it faster than this, then use your funds to do it. I don't ever foresee that happening, you know, but it's in there because, you know, there is a limited budget, you know, it's not unlimited.
Right. Thank you. So the reason I raise that is because, you know, we heard earlier that, you know, the Trails Committee is apparently one of the perks of the position is that they end up doing a lot of the maintenance themselves. And so it concerns me because this is work that technically the town is responsible for. And what we now seem to have is aging volunteers who have been doing this work. And I want to make sure that as new members come in to join that committee, and it's a fantastic group, that the expectation is not that they have to do manual labor as part of their responsibilities, because that really is something that we as the town should be taking on. So that was my question about sort of cost versus staffing. I did read through the policy. I appreciate all the work that went into it to try and clarify some of the issues that we faced, it was last year, especially for trees on conservation land and abutting properties. I am concerned about the Trails Committee budget being put in there and potentially being used as a stopgap measure. These committees have very small budgets. They're very judicious in how they utilize them. And so if funding is an issue, then that's something we're going to have to work through as a town, using their what amounts to a paltry amount for a significant amount of work that they do for the community is not really where I want to be going. And you know, to Chuck's point, we don't want to have to sort of have these different committees saying, no, it falls on your responsibility because it's taking your $1,000 and not ours. You know, the town really needs to own this one. So thank you.
Thanks, Vanessa. Bob?
I wanted to circle back and again use the word, it's not their responsibility, it's an option. I don't think any of us would have any problem removing this option from the policy.
Right.
It's meant to give them something that they didn't otherwise have. Clearly, if they object to it, it can go, and then they'll just have to wait.
That was the intention of it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that they're going to have to weigh in. I'd love to see them, to hear directly from them as far as, you know, how they'd like to handle it and make sure that they're able to weigh in.
So, and they mentioned to us there's a meeting next week, is it? I think it's next week that they're meeting. And yeah, it'd be great for them to have a chance to talk about it and give some more feedback to us. Sorry, Chuck.
Sure. Sorry. I mean, I feel like I need to talk for the Trails Committee just a little bit, but when you have a budget of $1,500, you don't have an option. I mean, that you know, that's not enough. There's something like 800 miles of trails, or I mean, I don't have the exact number. I think it's that in Reading. And if you split that up between the $1,500, there's not enough money to get into that. I mean, the Trails Committee came to us once, the Conservation Commission, and asked us to do a baseline study for Bear Meadow, and we didn't have any money either that could be used for that. So we're a little bit, you know, we don't have any money in our pockets either to do some of these environmental things. We couldn't pay for a tree ourselves if we didn't have the DPW supporting us. You know, I don't think that there's enough money in their stipend that they get to consider tree removal. I mean, they're good enough, and we should consider that their effort into this this tree removal, when they go out and they take down a tree or they cut up a tree that's in the trail or they maintain the trails, because they're doing that without pay. And that should be considered what their part is. That's what I would say, and I would say that for the Trails Committee.
So I think I want to, thanks for that, Chuck, and to your point too, Vanessa, on what do we want the town's responsibility to be here? And it may be that DPW needs more budget support to handle some of these situations. That may turn out to be where we get to also. But I think it's more kind of understanding, we have more trails. If we already know that it's kind of trending up in terms of the work that gets required, and we can get rid of what we see as dangerous to start, things that fall is next. You guys obviously are doing a great job at DPW handling much of it, which is wonderful. But if the need is going up, maybe we just need more budget there. Other board comments?
Well, I was just going to comment. I mean, so we're using the town resources differently, which is good and bad. But so we are forced to use our trails and rediscover our trails, and we have a lot of them. So, I mean, I think Jane, that's probably why you're getting a lot of calls, because people are all over the trails. So I don't know if this is a long-term change or a short-term change, but it goes to we're all stuck here for the foreseeable future for 12 months. So how do we make this a better place to live and a safer place to live? I'm also worried about the Trails Committee, just in general, taking on all this extra work. I don't know how the liability works. But yeah, funding for getting this work done makes a lot of sense. And I appreciate the attempt of all the staff to figure out a way to work together better on this.
Bob.
Sorry to have an internal discussion on TV, but Jane, is this the Parks Professional Technical Services line?
Yes.
Okay, so the budget that was going to FinCom that you may have just seen, increased that from 15 to 18,000. But I also increased shade trees from 10 to 15,000, and I can juggle that if you want. So just let me know.
Okay.
We can have less shade trees and more cut down.
Taking down trees.
Thank you.
Yikes, Vanessa. And Mike, did you have a comment afterward too? Yes. Okay. Sorry, Vanessa, and then Mike. Sorry.
Okay, thanks. So I have no more comments on this, but Jane, I realize it is 10 o'clock at night and I am sure you had a very long day. I just want to say thank you to you and all the workers who were on the road last night, making them cleaned up for the rest of us. So just thank you.
Thank you. I'll let them know. I appreciate that.
Mike.
Thank you.
Thanks. And I was just going to add something quickly in line with what Bob was just saying with the Shade Tree Fund. The conservation has made an effort over the last, I think it was 3 years ago, we developed a tree policy that included mechanisms to put funds into the Shade Tree Fund. I think we've done a pretty good job of helping increase what goes in there so that we can promote planting and promote some additional, so that as something gets taken down from a resident's property or neighboring property, we've got the opportunity to do some additional plantings. I think that's been successful. There's been discussion of, are there ways to use, whether it's that funding or to adjust some of the funding so that we can take care of this tree removal. I think that this is something that is just popping up more and more. I think you're hearing it from Jane, Chuck, Chris, we're seeing this more often. We're getting more calls. So we have the ability to set priorities, understand where the decisions are going. I think we're going to set ourselves up for success in this and be able to deal with the items. I think we've done a great job of trying to identify the items that have come up recently and situations that go along with that. But just like we've said, priorities and funding are always going to kind of overarch anything that we put in this. So
thanks, Mike. Any other comments, questions?
Hey, Mark, quickly, I just wanted to follow up to let you know that we are meeting monthly now with the conservation. That's something that came out of this. So we sort of look at projects that are coming down the pike and things that we want to do or they want us to do or whatever. So that's been really helpful. And then we put together a form to document you know, the requests that are coming in and some of the decisions that were made around there. So we have a history now, and we didn't have that before. So, you know, some good stuff have come out. Yeah, conservation has been great to work with.
Yeah, no, and thank you. I think, I know this is a discussion tonight, and, you know, we have had to kind of push this. It's got pushed out months, I think, right? Didn't we?
Yeah.
It was initially going to be December, which was like last decade. So, you know, I appreciate bringing it forward. You know, part of it, I think, is we hear you too, and it's helpful when you let us know that, that, you know, more is going on here. This is changing in terms of the town's use, in terms of needs that we have. I think the board wants to hear about that, and you know, what you've heard from a number of us tonight, I think, is a lot of support that, you know, let's give you some more help. Let's figure out how to do it. And thanks, Bob, for working on the fly.
Yeah.
So it sounds like for next steps, great to have some discussions. I think, Chuck, you said you do some reach out. That's great. I know the Trails Committee said they want to at least, you know, kind of talk about things, and let's hear from them. You know, what they're able to do and not do. I think Vanessa's point was stating it nicely that, you know, we're all getting a little bit older, and you know, maybe a little bit less capability for the manual labor that we've done in the past, even though we may love it. I didn't say that, but just anyway. Any last comments from the board or others on the meeting? Cool. Thank you, folks. Thanks for bringing it up. Get some well-earned rest.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, sorry. It's my. Okay, so we were going to do a town manager goal update. Bob had suggested to me that, given that it is 10:08, what if we handle it this way? That Bob kind of provides some written feedback to us directly, and then we'll put onto our next agenda kind of if there are questions, comments, discussion that we want to have about that as well. So we're just, instead of doing it right now, we push. But let me leave it to Bob to suggest.
Yeah, for the board, I can circulate a 10-slide presentation that I had for tonight. You know, it's always tough because it's bullet points, but you won't hear all the words that I would have said. But if anything strikes your fancy from the presentation I was going to make, just shoot me an email.
And then we can bring it back for.
I'll send that out to you, you know, as soon as the meeting ends.
Yeah, and we can just put a small agenda item for our next meeting as well.
Right.
Does that work for folks?
So Mark, I did have some things I was going to ask the town manager about, so I would need about 5 minutes.
So.
Is what's left just minutes, or?
I'm sorry, say again?
What is left for us to do? Minutes, if he's not going to update us on goals?
Minutes and future topics.
And I'm happy to do goals if you want.
What's the board's appetite?
It's only 10:10. No, I mean, so I have an appetite.
Dangerous words, Karen.
Feel the heat.
You know, an abbreviated or a slice of the excitement. And as I said, I had something I wanted to ask about. I would love if I could have 5 minutes.
That cool, folks? Fire away, Karen.
Okay. All right. So this is to follow up on some of the things that the town manager reported on last week. So I have 3 questions and some comments, and they're all sort of related. So I would just let me get through them, and then, you know, any updates you have, Bob, would be great. And maybe there's follow-up. So, all right. So this week, unfortunately, I have heard some disturbing ongoing exchanges between the Reading teachers and the Reading police officers. And I've heard, this concerns me because I've heard that the situation may be escalating, and that, and all this is all secondhand, that an officer may even have been suspended. I'm quite concerned that our select board hasn't received any information on this, because, you know, communication with the select board is a pretty important item, and we've talked about that in previous review cycles. So, and it's very concerning to me because it's just, if it's true, it's divisive and it has serious ramifications for our ability to recruit and hire the best teachers and the best police officers. So it's just really important for us to have this information. So the questions under this item number 1 that I would love to have answered would be, what conversations has Bob, have you had with the chief and the superintendent about this situation? If what I'm hearing secondhand from residents is accurate, and what actions have you taken to improve this? Number 2, I've been trying to follow up, and I've asked in several emails and during a public select board meetings for specific information about the incident that was reported to, RPD on November 3rd about allegedly a Reading police officer holding a political sign while in uniform and taking selfies. And I haven't gotten satisfactory answers. And after our last meeting, and I know you made an effort, Bob, but we just didn't get the detail that we need. But I had sent an email asking specifically for the November 3rd police blotter, a copy of the completed police investigation, and a copy of our Reading Police Conduct Handbook. And so I haven't received this information, so I'm going to ask you again for it. And this is, it's my job to follow up. When residents are repeatedly asking about this, and we got an email today, I need to follow up, and I need this information to do my job. So the questions under this number 2 item would be, when would I be able to see those items that I asked for? And when would I have an opportunity to ask for follow-up questions? Because I didn't get an opportunity to ask any questions last week. And, you made that clear that you weren't going to entertain questions. And so number 3, related to this, is just, what is the status of our deputy police chief hiring process? Because again, with this kind of backdrop, I want to make sure that we're fully supporting our new chief in the entire Reading Police Department. And that's can't be more than 5 minutes. So thank you. I appreciate that.
I'm going to start by saying I don't appreciate the way this came up. None of this was on the agenda, and it's inappropriate. I'm happy to answer some of your questions. I don't have answers for all of your questions. You put in a public records request to the police department, and I stepped out of it. They will respond to you in the time frame that they are given by the law. I didn't know if they had already responded to you. So you will get the information that you requested. It was only, I believe, late last week that you requested it. Is that correct?
So I emailed you. I didn't fill out, I don't know if you consider that a public records, an official public records
yes,
request?
it was treated like a public records request.
So I emailed you on Wednesday, and you did confirm receipt, and I asked you to just let me know when I could get it, and I haven't heard anything since. So
okay, well, the police department will respond to you. They have a formal process they follow. They will get everything that you asked for.
that's totally fine.
If they don't, then they'll redact things or explain to you why it had to be redacted.
So
And
since
again,
I
they're
didn't
following
realize,
a defined process.
so since I didn't realize that was a formal information request, like, is that a 30-day turnaround, or what should I expect?
I'd have to ask them. It's not 30 days. It's much shorter than that.
Okay, great.
In terms of police and teachers, I would be very disturbed if the information you had was current, because I reported to this board at the last meeting and sent out a memo to the media and to the town about it, as did John Doherty on the Thursday before. So I believe that issue was nipped in the bud. I have not heard any complaints since my memo. So if you have any other information that's after that date, I'd be keenly interested in that.
So I saw a memo that you put a lot of effort into, everybody being patient about the vaccinations. I haven't seen any official.
No, it was before that.
For that.
Okay.
A couple weeks ago.
So when I asked about the specifics, are those in that email?
I guess I'm not really sure what you mean by the specifics.
When I ask a specific about an officer potentially having been suspended, is that something that's in the email?
Karen, do you really expect me to say that in an open meeting?
Yep, I'm just saying, is that the kind of?
It's not going to happen. If you want to ask Labor Council to come meet with you and explain why, I'm happy to arrange that. But that's not an appropriate question for open session.
Well, I'm following up on a report that you gave last week, so I think it is appropriate, but there were no nouns in that report, so I don't feel like
I'm sorry, wait. What did I say last meeting?
you gave some sort of a general update, and I honestly, quite honestly, I didn't know what you were talking about. And now I have residents calling me and specifically.
Well, I think you're mixing two events, or I am, which is why, you know, bringing up events like this and information like this without any room to prepare doesn't feel very appropriate. I can't give you a very good answer.
Well,
I don't really understand the question.
Last Tuesday, understood. I found at the last moment you were going to report on the events of November 3rd. It wasn't in your town manager report, and you told me you didn't have to give me an advance notice. So, you know,
What I said
we can agree to work on continuing to improve communication.
So I'm gonna intervene.
No, I need to say something because this is for the public. The thing that I write for the meeting is not the town manager report, as I've discussed with Karen. The town manager report that I gave tonight and I give every meeting is never in writing. It's something that, you know, things that happen, facts that happen, COVID information. The memo that covers the meeting is not the town manager's report. And I thought I had explained that to you. So when I gave an update that you're talking about, Ann had asked me as the public safety liaison, Ann had asked me to give it, so I did. But that was not in my report because it was not, I mean, it was not in the packet because it was not part of the meeting overview.
Yeah, and you did ask me not to ask any questions. You said you would not be entertaining any questions, so I didn't get a chance to ask any questions.
And I said that because it was not an agenda item.
Questions, Bob.
I explained to you it was not an agenda item, Karen.
So I'm going to intervene here, folks. Couple things. One, we need to take this down a little bit. But what I'm hearing is that, back to our discussion on communications, one of the things that we need is a way to kind of, if there are continued questions, to have a structure for it. And it would be better, ideally, with some advance notice, just to make it possible to have some more specific answers to it. But I think we need to kind of make that mechanism work. And I think that clearly, you know, I'm hearing two people very frustrated at the moment. So we need to kind of pursue that and figure out how we're going to do that. And one of it is, I think, thinking about the communications policy and the follow-up system. And the second is just that I think, you know, Karen is expressing that we need to get some more information on certain things also, and to figure out what's the best way to do that. Probably not, you know, kind of structured in an open meeting like this, although it has to be published as part of the open meeting. But let's figure out how to do that better. I'm hearing, you know, strong frustration on that. So that would be my suggestion. I think we should take it down a level tonight. And then let's talk about how we want to do that going forward.
Yep, I'm happy to do that. Thank you.
I think we got to go to minutes. There's only one. I do have one request in the minutes, and that is that there's a discussion of the priorities that the board set, and we actually had the Excel spreadsheet that showed what those priorities were. I would ask that the board allow that we put that in specifically.
That was going to be my suggestion as well, actually. And other than that, I didn't have any.
Mine as well. Other folks, is that all right? Yeah, Carlo, is that all right with you? Oh, you're muted again.
I'll probably be fine with it, but what exactly you're referring to again? I'm sorry.
So let me get to the exact spot, sorry. There is a comment specific to the priorities that the board members expressed in terms of the budget. Sorry, I'm gonna get to the page. Oh, Caitlin, do you have it? Sorry, I'm scrolling fast.
The one about department heads, that one?
The one that talked about specifically the
priorities in our budget priorities, or ranking budget priorities. And we'd come up with a, there was a chart that Mark had filled.
The health director, that one.
Yes, that's it, exactly.
Exactly.
You're good. Okay. Any other changes people wanted?
Mark, could you just resend that to me, like send that to me in an email again?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yep, absolutely. Sorry, I'm not scrolling to it quickly here. And no other changes?
Is it better to be inserted or an attachment? What do we normally do?
Attachment actually, I think is right.
Just add it at the end as like a whole document.
Yep, I think that's exactly right. Sorry, I'm not finding the page, although I should. No other changes.
So am I going to say as amended, even though it's not, what do I say? As amended? Okay.
Yes, please. Yeah, so Carla, could you make the motion, please?
Yep. What was this, January, what was it?
5th.
January 5th, okay. Motion to approve minutes from January 5th, 2021 as amended.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Sorry. Was that Karen first or Vanessa first? I missed.
It
Did
doesn't
you catch
matter.
what it was, Caitlin?
I got Vanessa.
Okay, great. Any further discussion? Okay, let's take a vote. Anne?
Yes.
Vanessa?
Yes.
Karen?
Yes.
Carlo?
Yes.
Mark? Yes. Next meeting is scheduled for the 16th. Vanessa pointed out that is vacation week in the schools. It would be good to have it on that day. And actually it's likely we want to have an executive session at that meeting. And we would start the meeting at 7 as we normally do. And the first thing would be the executive session. Is the 16th still, does that work for everybody still? Yeah. Okay. So let's stay with the 16th. We have a couple of follow-ups. Yes, please. Sorry, go ahead, Vanessa.
Sorry, for the executive session, is there any reason or benefit to meeting next week as opposed to the week after?
Not at this time, no. Yeah, I offered that up. So, okay. We'll have a couple of follow-ups from here as well, including town manager goals. Anything else that we haven't talked about that you want to see for the next agenda or future agendas?
Mark?
Yes, Karen.
Could I, Carlo brought up having the Black Earth composting presentation earlier. I don't know if you added that, but I would definitely like to second that.
I think he suggested March. I think that's what they requested actually was March.
I think you're right. Yep, I think that's a great idea. Thank you for bringing that up, Carlo. And then, then the other item, I think we said also for March was the energy input from the Climate Advisory Committee.
When do you think they might like to do that?
We actually, we talked about that probably sooner rather than later.
So as early as next meeting?
Yep.
Let's just make sure that we have room, but we'll come back to that one really quickly. Anything else? Vanessa?
I know there hasn't been a lot of progress on building security because of COVID this year, but if there is any update, it would be great to share one.
Okay, Carlo?
Thanks. I just wanted to ask if the placeholder for our next meeting with Erin at 7:30 is where the potential applicants might come, Bob? Is that placeholder?
I don't know yet, Carlo, it could be. Everything in the agenda is going to back up, an hour or whatever because of the executive session. So we'll sort all that out.
No, the reason I'm asking is that if that's not it, it's going to be on the agenda that she's, that's all I want to.
Okay.
Yeah, let's assume it's a new item for now.
Okay.
And we'll just add it. That way, we start chopping as the week goes on. Ann, did I see you had your hand raised as well? Nope.
No.
Okay, any
Are
other?
you going to say motion to adjourn?
Carlo?
Not yet. What is the update on our fire truck? Bob, the ladder truck?
I'm sorry, what are you asking? What is an update?
Yeah, is that coming before this town meeting, the ladder truck money?
I think it's in the capital plan for next year, if that's what you're asking, yes.
Okay,
Yep.
okay. All right, sorry, just came to
No,
mind.
no, it's okay.
Motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
Ann seconds. All right, we will take the roll call. Ann,
Yes.
Vanessa,
Yes.
Carlo,
Yes.
Karen,
Yes.
Mark, yes. We are adjourned.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you,
Thank
everybody.
you, folks.